Chapter 537. Chapter 537. Dispute is about to begin. The heavenly source mirror has leveled up quickly and has become a great sage tool after it has swallowed so many sage tools. Yemo merrily stated. Great sage tool and sage tool were two entirely different concepts. In fact, there was a difference of cloud and mud between them. Yemo had sustained injuries to his essence. However, the heavenly source mirror had nothing to do with that. In fact, Yishuin hadn't seen the injuries affecting the essence of the heavenly source mirror. Therefore, Yemo had swallowed the tool spirits of many sage tools in order to replenish his essence. It was similar to when Yishu had swallowed other book demons in order to strengthen his essence. Basically, all living things possess the ability to consume another life and assimilate it into theirs. However, the extent to which they do it isn't the same. The human race also possesses a version of this ability, the so-called you become what you eat theory. However, the extent of food consumption isn't so exaggerated in their case. After all, humans can't devour and assimilate food in its entirety like these demons and spirits can. The heavenly source mirror had swallowed the remaining sage tools. It was impossible for an ordinary divine tool to level up like that. It could be said that the heavenly source mirror had grown up automatically. After all, an ordinary divine tool required the constant support of its owner to add materials. Moreover, special sacrificial techniques also needed to be utilized for it to progress. However, Yishuin didn't need to worry about these things because Yemo had taken care of these things by himself. In fact, Yishuin felt that Yemo could have used the heavenly source mirror as his main body and could have cultivated to become a peerless and great devil. After all, this was very much a possibility. That's awesome. Yishuin burst into laughter and replied. The heavenly source mirror would undoubtedly become his trump card since it had advanced and become a great sage tool. It would be like a trump card that is hidden at the bottom of the deck. In fact, it would be enough to inskill his opponents. What are you planning to do next? Yemo asked. I'm planning to visit this great gas building. I want to have a look. The expression in Yi Zaiwen's eyes looked exceptionally firm as he replied. He could have returned to the true Marshall University through the Northern Dippers transportation portal. However, he had decided to postpone that because he wanted to test his limits and gain practical experiences before he returned to the true Marshall University. This represented the so-called saying reading 10,000 books isn't equal to walking 10,000 miles on the road. There are a lot of matters that couldn't be understood by undergoing closed-door training alone. The Great Gas Building was undoubtedly the most famous place in the entire Rivershore Starfield. The Great Gas Building attracted powerful experts from all corners of the Rivershore Starfield. It had been famous for countless years now. This place certainly had many treasures, and they would provide a big boost to Yi Shiwen since he has always had to face great difficulties in order to promote his strength. Yi Shiwen also had the assistance of his blood slave. The blood slave now controlled the body of the Star Colossus. So, Yi Shiwen was confident that he would be able to escape even if he were to come across a great sage expert. The world was so big, and he could go anywhere. Anyway, I can see that you have plentiful real elemental energy. Moreover, you've already reached the peak of the intermediate stage of Sage Realm. Therefore, it would be better if you first look for a place to train. You should try to break through the threshold of the late stage of Sage Realm. You will feel much more confident if you go to Great Building after that. Yemo said. Yi Shiwen used his divine sense and shared some information about the Great Gas Building with him. Okay. Yi Shiwen nodded. He had the assistance of his blood slave, and his blood slave had become extremely powerful after it had started to control the Star Colossus. However, promoting his own strength would still take a lot of time. Moreover, he couldn't rely too much on others. The Rivershore Starfield was vast, and there was a big region in its depths which was called the Great Gas Collar. The Great Gas Collar was gigantic. However, it was perennially packed with a poisonous fog. Even the great sage experts didn't dare to venture into this region carelessly. Otherwise, they would be corroded to death. The Great Gas Building was located at the center of the Great Gas Collar. Some people said that the Great Gas Building was a divine tool. while some people said that it was the residence of a god. However, everyone agreed that the Great Gas Building was full of mysteries. The Great Gas Collar remained packed with poisonous fog all the time. It opened once every 50 years. Many old fogies would come out of their closed-door training and would rush to this place whenever it opened because there were countless precious treasures present at this place. And they could possibly make the breakthrough into the Great Sage Realm if they were to obtain even a small number of those treasures. However, the Great Sage experts didn't dare to approach the Great Gas Collar. They would get suppressed as soon as they entered it. It didn't matter how formidable a Great Sage expert was. They would be demoted to the Sage Great Perfection Realm if they entered the Great Gas Collar. Moreover, there wasn't any exception to this. This effect was absolute. Moreover, once a Great Sage expert who had ventured into the Great Gas Collar had been targeted and killed by several experts of the Sage Great Perfection Realm inside the Great Gas Collar. Therefore, no Great Sage expert had dared to set foot in the Great Gas Collar since then. Initially, the Great Sage experts weren't so scared of the Great Gas Collar. After all, they still carried the experience and perception of a Great Sage expert, even if they had been suppressed by the effects of Great Gas Collar and demoted to the Sage Great Perfection Realm. So, ordinary experts of Sage Great Perfection Realm would still be no match for them. Therefore, many Great Sage experts would visit the Great Gas Collar. The ordinary experts of Sage Great Perfection Realm were no match for them, and would get tortured to death by these Great Sage experts. However, the ordinary experts of Sage Great Perfection Realm had later joined hands, and had killed a Great Sage expert who had ventured into the Great Gas Collar. And no Great Sage expert had dared to enter the Great Gas Collar since then. After all, how could they make such a mistake with so much wealth on their body? Therefore, the Great Gas Collar had become very famous for being able to suppress Great Sage experts. Its notoriety had even spread in the nearby star regions. It was a famous restricted zone for Great Sage experts. Yi Shiwen was looking over the information collected by Yin Hong Yi on the Great Gas Collar. However, he had also become apprehensive about going to the Great Gas Collar after he had come to know that even a Great Sage expert had died inside this place. Great Sage experts were very different from ordinary Sage experts. All Great Sage experts were famous in their respective regions. However, they had been suppressed at this place, and one of them had even died here. This represented the so-called saying a dragon swimming in the shallow waters is toyed by prawns, and a tiger fallen flat on the ground is bullied by the dogs. This place was extremely mysterious. Yi Shiwen flew quickly for another month and finally sensed the Great Gas Collar. However, the first thing that had caught his attention was an incomparably large city. It appeared as if a huge continent was floating in the space. The city looked like a giant beast hidden in the space, and it extended as far as one could see. In fact, it looked like a star colossus. The cities in the space were often much bigger than the cities on various planets. This was because the space had a harsh environment. Therefore, a lot of people lived in a region together. Moreover, there weren't any topographical limitations. So, the cities grew in size with time. However, this city was even bigger than Shangyang City. In fact, it seemed to be touching the sky. The city walls were so tall that one couldn't even see the edges. This was the only city in the vicinity of the Great Gas Collar. Therefore, it was known as the Great Gas City. It had also become popular because of the Great Gas Collar. Yi Shiwen entered the city without any hesitation. The Great Gas City was very lively at this time since the Great Gas Collar was about to open. The experts from various regions had rushed over here en masse. The experts could be easily found everywhere in the city. The majority of these experts were ordinary Sage experts. The Great Sage experts couldn't enter the Great Gas Collar. Therefore, it was a great opportunity to shine for these ordinary Sage experts. Yi Shiwen entered a restaurant to rest for a while. Then, he let out Xiaoya from the Heavenly Source Mirror. He had put Xiaoya inside the Heavenly Source Mirror since he had been in a hurry to get to this place. The Heavenly Source Mirror could be regarded as a self-sufficient space at present. It wasn't very big. However, it had enough area for Xiaoya to perform a wide range of activities. Xiaoya had advanced in these 2 months, and had entered the 6th layer of the Xiantian realm. Yi Shiwen envied her progress. However, he couldn't do anything about it. There were too many geniuses in this world, like fishes in the ocean. Pang Yongbo had become a Heaven's Pride expert at the age of 11 or 12. Yi Shiwen would have no time left to do anything else in his life if he started to envy each and every one of these geniuses. The entire restaurant was unusually crowded at this time. Yi Shiwen and Xiao Yu were rather unnoticeable and hadn't attracted anyone's attention. After all, there were too many experts here. Moreover, it was full of strange people. One could tell that there was an enormous difference in the living environments of these strange experts. The majority of the people had black hair and black eyes. However, some of them had purple hair or red eyes. But these strange-looking people also seemed to have blended into the crowd. Someone there had mentioned that these bizarre-looking people probably had some relations with a bereaved race. And someone had also said that their living environment must have been responsible for such a change in their appearance. Everyone had different opinions. However, this was nothing but an ordinary matter. Yi Shiwen wasn't surprised. He had seen white, black, brown, and all other types of people on the earth. Xiao Yu wasn't concerned about these matters either. In fact, she didn't seem to care about anything besides Yi Shiwen. The Great Gas Collar is finally about to open. I've been waiting here for more than a year. But my wait is finally over. Yeah, the Great Gas Collar has already begun to spit out some heavenly treasures. Yi Shiwen had been listening. Apparently, the Great Gas Collar was known to unceasingly spit out heavenly treasures whenever it was about to open. At that time, the entire territory would shake, and it would seem as if those heavenly treasures were falling from it. A lot of people had arrived as early as 1 year before the opening so that they could find a favorable spot and capture those falling heavenly treasures. Of course, sometimes demon beasts also used to get spat out. One could obtain rare treasures if they were lucky, and they might bump into those demon beasts and get torn to pieces by them if they were unlucky. In fact, the chances of that happening were very high. However, these experts were basically desperados who would do anything for their cultivation. Many of them were random cultivators with no backgrounds. They didn't have many resources at their disposal. Therefore, they had to strive for everything that they required. Yi Shiwen was also like them in this regard. I will go to observe in a while. I wish to see what all heavenly treasures are going to come out. It will be an easy task to gain riches and honor if I manage to obtain some. Humph! Riches and honor? I think you want to die. Someone disdainfully sneered and replied, You think it is some great place? Beware. You will be doomed if some demon beasts appear instead of those pathetic heavenly treasures. Who was that? Which bastard said this? Come out and face me if you have the guts. I dare you. That man stood up and shouted. Why wouldn't I dare to show a reckless fool like you his place? I don't know how many arrogant men like you die every day. That expert who had sneered suddenly stood up and shouted. The entire restaurant immediately became noisy. It seemed that one wrong sentence would lead to a big fight in a place like this. The other experts who were present inside the restaurant also became vigilant and stood up one after another. The 6th vibration has begun. A loud shout came from outside the city and traveled far and wide. To be continued. Chapter 538. The entire restaurant had suddenly begun to seethe with excitement. Everyone had forgotten about that little fight after the Great Gas Collar had begun to vibrate. After all, it had vibrated for the 6th time. The Great Gas Collar used to vibrate 9 times before opening. Each vibration lasted for almost a month. Heavenly treasures and demon beasts used to appear on the edge of the Great Gas Collar because of the vibrations during this time. And it depended on a person's luck whether they would come across a fortuitous treasure or a disaster. The entire restaurant had emptied within a few moments. Yi Shiwen had also gotten mixed among them. He flew out of the Great Gas City and went in the direction of Great Gas Collar. The Great Gas Collar appeared in front of him in a short span of time. The Great Gas City was like a colossus floating into space, as Yi Shiwen had originally felt. However, the Great Gas Collar looked like a boundless continent floating into space by that measure. It looked infinite. It looked like a vast floating continent that had been surrounded by a poisonous fog. Yi Shiwen had barely arrived when he saw a guy getting corroded to death by that poisonous fog. That guy hadn't believed the rumors about this place. He had thought that he'd be able to storm into the great gas collar with the help of his sage tool. However, he and his sage tool had gotten corroded by the poisonous fog. That guy's screams had shaken the void. There were many other experts who hadn't believed the rumors either, and had thought about entering the great gas collar. But all of them suddenly stopped at their places. However, these people were daredevils whose cultivations had reached the sage realm, and each one of them was proud and arrogant. So, how could they stop because of fear? They obviously weren't going to give up. Puff! A streamer of light spouted from the great gas collar. It has started. It has started spitting. The great gas collar had begun to spout heavenly treasures. All the experts suddenly went crazy because of this. A dozen of the sage experts scrambled to capture those treasures. They rushed towards that streamer one after another. However, more than half of those experts hadn't even reached close to that streamer before they had been attacked by the other experts. And not a single person among them survived this sudden ambush. Roar! A roar came from that streamer. The divine light dispersed and revealed a ferocious demon beast. Its ominous energy looked dreadful. Then, that beast opened its mouth like a huge sacrificial bowl and sucked ferociously. A few sage experts in the vicinity started to run quickly. However, they couldn't escape and got swallowed by that beast. That demon beast's speed was insanely fast. It had killed those unlucky sage experts in an instant, and a river of blood started to flow into space as corpses floated everywhere. The demon beast swaggered away after it had killed those experts. It's too ferocious. This demon beast must be 10 times, or even 100 times more ferocious than the star beasts. Someone said in fear. Fortunately, that person hadn't rushed towards the streamer. Otherwise, they would also have met their end like those other people. Many of the remaining experts decided that they wouldn't hurriedly rush up. They would first see what was coming out. Otherwise, they could also come across such a tragedy. They had realized that gambling with their lives wouldn't be enough to capture those heavenly treasures. Those ordinary experts had met with a cruel and bloody end. However, this was how the ordinary experts used to survive. After all, they didn't have an abundance of resources like those Heaven's Pride experts. So, they had to rely on themselves for everything. This place is very weird. One has to put their life on stake to fight for a bright future. Yi Shiwen secretly said. Moreover, this wasn't even the most dangerous time. The most dangerous time would come after they had entered the great gas collar. Yi Shiwen waited for a long time before a streamer finally emerged out. A mighty aura dissipated in the surroundings. It seemed that a demon beast had come out once again. Everyone stopped in their tracks since they didn't wish to throw away their lives. Yi Shiwen concentrated his real elemental energy in his eyes, and he saw that a golden feather was wrapped up inside that streamer. The Phoenix regeneration technique had begun to operate automatically inside his body almost immediately after he had seen that feather. Yi Shiwen, quickly go and grab it. It's a phoenix feather. Yi Mo's voice reverberated inside Yi Ziwen's mind. He didn't wait for Yi Mo to speak further. A pair of wings suddenly opened at his back. He then transformed into a streamer of light and rushed forward. Some people had been gloating since they had thought that the streamer contained a ferocious beast. However, Yi Shiwen smacked open the streamer and exposed the phoenix feather in front of them. Then, the phoenix feather got sucked into the heavenly source mirror. Stop him. He has obtained a phoenix feather. Someone reacted quickly and shouted. A bunch of dreadful and imposing auras rushed towards Yi Shiwen from every direction. These sage experts hadn't held back their imposing auras even a bit. Their auras carried incredible power and surrounded Yi Shiwen. A few of those experts were very fast, and they had arrived in front of Yi Shiwen very quickly. Yi Shiwen sneered as his body began to leak golden divinities. The golden waves looked mighty and enormous, and his murderous aura looked frightening. Bang! A late-stage sage expert who was the fastest among them had already arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. However, a big hand fell down from above and grabbed him. The gigantic hand pinched him and made his body explode. That late-stage sage expert had been reduced to a massive blood fog as a result. Then, the divinities took the form of a giant wave under Yi Ziwen's feet and surged forward. It seemed as if a star had pounded with an incredible force. The other experts who had rushed towards Yi Shiwen got drowned out by this golden wave. The rest of the experts found Yi Shiwen to be extremely ferocious. They couldn't possibly dare to go after him. After all, it would be akin to courting death. They were certainly wild. However, they weren't idiots. They knew that they didn't have any chance of winning. Yi Shiwen picked up Xiaoya, turned around, and left. He had felt the divine sense of a sage great perfection level expert sweeping over here. Their aura was getting increasingly close. So, it was evident that a senior expert of sage great perfection realm was coming. Yi Ziwen's current strength was enough to sweep away an expert of sage small perfection realm. However, he could barely resist a sage great perfection level expert. His speed became extremely fast once the demon wings opened, and he returned to the Great Gas City in a matter of moments. This place is in chaos. There are no rules or restrictions. There is only one rule, and that is strength rules. Yi Shiwen secretly said. After all, everyone was fighting frantically for their future. Yi Shiwen, you got very lucky this time. It is clear that this phoenix feather is from a pure blood phoenix. It would be an enormous benefit for your phoenix regeneration technique if you were to refine it. Yemo said. This was also why he had told Yi Shiwen to grab it. The Great Gas Collar spouted different kinds of magical items for the entire month. Some people had skyrocketed after they had obtained those treasures. However, the majority of people had died there. They had either died in the mouths of those demon beasts or they had been killed by other experts. Yi Shiwen had moved into action many times in this 1 month. And he had also obtained some heavenly treasures. They weren't extremely precious. However, they were very rare. Yi Shiwen hadn't missed any target since he had the assistance of Yi Mo by his side. Moreover, he would never grab the wrong item. However, he had also encountered a very dangerous situation once when he had been tracked down by a senior expert of the Sage Great Perfection realm. In fact, he had been pursued for a long time before he had finally been able to escape. Yi Shiwen had returned to the Great Gas City from the Great Gas Collar today. The Great Gas City had become even more crowded during these past several days. He had come to know that there was a Chamber of Commerce in this city. Moreover, it was going to hold an auction very soon. For big forces resided in the Great Gas City. The city government governed the entire city and had been a super force for a long time. However, the other 3 colossuses, Great Gas Chamber of Commerce, Heaven Dominating Dojo, and the Sky Moonsword School, operated under the city lord. The Great Gas Chamber of Commerce was the one conducting the auction. They conduct such auctions after every monthly vibration of the Great Gas Collar. And they gain people's attention every time. Those experts who had harvested big profits from the Great Gas Collar also wanted to sell some magical items. Those magical items were surely exceptional. However, not all of them were suitable for their own use. Therefore, it was better to sell those magical items in the auction and get the equivalent amount of primary spirit dawn instead of having to safeguard them. After all, they could buy the things that they required with the primary spirit dawn. The Great Gas City had become much more crowded than usual at the time of the auction. Many experts had rushed towards the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce. However, nobody dared to cause any disturbance at this time. They were rowdy and arrogant. However, they weren't idiots. They obviously knew that the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce was counted among the 4 big forces of the Great Gas City. And this big force certainly wouldn't sit back and do nothing if someone stirred trouble. A large number of experts who belonged to the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce had been keeping watch outside the Chamber of Commerce. So, there was no way to cause a disturbance even if someone wanted to do so. Yi Shiwen hadn't gotten mixed with the crowd like an average person. Instead, he had gotten hold of a private room. However, he had to make a security deposit of 100 million primary spirit dawn for this room. These primary spirit dawn would be returned to him after the auction. This was the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce's way of checking whether their client had enough financial resources or not. They didn't care about their client's strength. They only cared about their financial resources. Yishuan didn't mind this. After all, he possessed a huge amount of primary spirit dawn if one didn't consider his ceaseless consumption of spirit energy. Moreover, he had obtained tons of primary spirit dawn by killing sage experts here. In fact, he had seized a huge amount of primary spirit dawn, and the total amount in his stock had surpassed 1 billion primary spirit dawn. Yi Shiwen took Xiaoya inside the private room after he had paid 100 million primary spirit dawn. The room wasn't very big. In fact, it was spread across an area of only a dozen or so square meters. However, it looked extremely extravagant since it had been decorated magnificently. Some fruits had been arranged on a table. These were spirit fruits which contained spirit energy. An average person would feel refreshed after having eaten these fruits. But they were also very beneficial for the experts. The time passed second by second, minute by minute. Soon, all the experts who wished to participate in the auction had arrived. Suddenly, a loud uproar came from the outside as a group of experts walked in. They were headed by a young man whose face looked gentle but slightly gloomy. Gee, what's there in this auction that it has even attracted the attention of young Master Tianjian of Sky Moon Sword School? Is this the Sky Moon Sword School's young Master Tianjian? He is outstanding. Look at his exceptionally calm aura. Perhaps he has already entered the Sage Great Perfection realm. It's no wonder that he is being trained by the Sky Moon Sword School to be their next leader. His strength is simply outstanding. It is said that the Sky Moon Sword School will be represented by him this time around. He will go to the Great Gas Collar to compete for the top 10 positions. To be continued. Chapter 539. Chapter 539. Competition in the Auction. Part 1. The Great Gas City is worthy of being one of the centers of River Shore Starfield. After all, the successor of one of its forces has such a cultivation level. Yi Shiwen secretly became speechless. Don't tell me these forces have the backing of a great sage expert keeping watch. Yi Shiwen knew that it was easy to find sage experts in these star regions because of the harsh living environment. However, it was very difficult to find great sage experts. Generally, only 1 or 2 great sage experts could be found in a star region. But it couldn't be compared with the huge number of great sage experts in those other worlds. This place also couldn't be compared with a colossus like the True Martial University. Generally, the successors of True Martial University used to be at least at the Sage Great Perfection level. So, there was no comparison whatsoever. Therefore, this force was enough to run rampant in this star region if a senior Great Sage expert was keeping watch. Yi Shiwen was also somewhat worried. That Great Gas Building was still in the center of the Great Gas Collar. So, everyone's gaze was fixated on the Great Gas Building. After all, it was the main target of the experts who had rushed over here. In fact, the treasures of Great Gas Collar were like the appetizer before the main course. The experts which were the real deal had arrived here for the heritages present inside the Great Gas Building and the magical items that could appear inside. However, the Great Gas Collar wasn't worth their time. Of course, the target of the majority of experts on the weaker side was merely the heavenly treasures that appeared inside the Great Gas Collar, since they couldn't dare to think about obtaining the heritages inside the Great Gas Building. It wasn't clear how many experts had arrived. However, only 10 experts could get the permission to enter the Great Gas Building. Obviously, the competition was intense and brutal. So, none of the experts who were below the Sage Great Perfection realm had ever gotten the permission in the past. Therefore, entering the building was merely a delusional and unrealistic thought for the majority of the people. Yi Zaiwen's current strength was enough to defend himself inside the Great Gas Collar. However, it wasn't enough if he wanted to get the permission to enter. Yi Shiwen decided that he would undergo closed-door training once the auction was over so that he could get the permission to enter. The entire Great Gas Collar would vibrate 3 times more. There was half year left before the Great Gas Collar finished spitting magical items. And He would have made the breakthrough into the late stage of Sage Realm by then. Therefore, there would be hope of getting the permission to enter the Great Gas Building and obtaining the heritages. Another group of experts had arrived after the arrival of the young Master Tian Jian of the Sky Moon Sword School. However, they weren't holding swords like the experts of the Sky Moon Sword School. Instead, each of these experts was holding different kinds of weapons. They were headed by a tall man whose face carried a savage look and whose eyes looked ice-cold and ruthless. Moreover, his cultivation was as good as that of young Master Tianjian. He is King Tai of the Heaven-Dominating Dojo. His aura is very ferocious. He looks like a savage beast. He had merely shot a glance this way, and everyone had still felt as if they were falling down an ice hole. He is extremely frightening. Don't you know that King Tai had fallen into a lair of star beasts in his childhood? He was rescued several years later. However, he had transformed into a beast by then. His bearing is like a savage's. He kills the entire family of anyone who goes against him. He is the chief disciple of Dominating Heaven's dojo. The man's tone dropped increasingly. It seemed as if he was afraid that King Tai might hear him. The private room had been designed very cleverly since no one could see inside the room from outside. However, one could use their divine sense from inside the room in order to see what was happening outside. Yi Shiwen felt the ferocious aura of King Tai. He had made everyone scared, and nobody had dared to approach him. After all, he looked like a fierce beast. In fact, one would have believed that a fierce beast stood in front of them, and not a man if they had closed their eyes and didn't see him. Some other experts had also arrived after the people of these two groups. However, they hadn't been able to cause a sensation like the people of these two groups had. Yi Shiwen fed the spirit fruits to Xiaoya. He hadn't given her any medicinal pill since he was afraid that it would ruin her foundation. Her foundation was very deep and very pure at the same time. These medicinal pills would ruin her unique innate talent if she used them for increasing her cultivation speed. However, these spirit fruits wouldn't harm her. These fruits were natural and had been grown on the ground. So, nothing could be better than these fruits. Moreover, Yi Shiwen felt that Xiaoya wasn't far from making the breakthrough into the truth realm. In fact, she would undoubtedly make the breakthrough into the truth realm within 10 years. However, he couldn't ponder much on this since the auction began very soon. It began with the loud thump sound of a wooden mallet. It seemed that the sharp and clear sound worked as a calming force, and suddenly made the noisy atmosphere tranquil. The great gas chamber of commerce was rich and overbearing. Even that wooden mallet was a divine tool. In fact, it was a sage tool that could transform into a weapon at the time of need. Everyone looked toward the middle of the auction stage at this moment. They saw an approximately 20-year-old young woman. She was dressed up in a dark green muslin skirt. Her facial features looked delicate, and her skin was as fair as snow. Her jade-like, delicate arms were partly visible under her muslin skirt. They looked like lotuses and made her look even more attractive. A lot of people whistled like boiling pots when they saw this woman on stage. We are very lucky this time. Great Gas Chamber of Commerce's genius, when Yi-Run is hosting the auction. Yeah, I've heard that when Yi-Run is a genius in the field of business. Great Gas Chamber of Commerce used to be one of the many chambers of commerce in the Great Gas Collar in the past. However, it dominates the other chambers of commerce in the Great Gas City now, and it's all due to her great efforts. In fact, it has become a colossal force like the Dominating Heaven Dojo and the Sky Moon Sword School within a short span of 300 years. She's not just a business genius. After all, those other businessmen are nothing but money makers. They just know give and take. However, she's also a top cultivator. In fact, it is said that her cultivation is as good as that of King Tai and young Master Tianjian. She is counted among Great Gas 4 heroes and has many admirers. Yi Shiwen heard these people's discussion and understood that this young woman was one of the 4 heroes of Great Gas. He hadn't spent much time in Great Gas City. However, he had heard about the so-called Great Gas 4 heroes. All 4 of these individuals were outstanding. The eldest young master of the city government was the other hero apart from King Tai, young Master Tianjin. and when he ran. He was also ranked first among the 4 heroes of Great Gas. This eldest young master of the city government wasn't the most popular among the 4 heroes, even though everyone considered him as the leader of the 4 heroes. He wasn't as popular as when he ran. After all, she looked beautiful. Her cultivation was on top. Moreover, she had the support of a colossus like the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce behind her. One would soar into the sky if they got married to her. They would make rapid career advancement. However, she was even more difficult to get than the most precious treasures. One could offend anyone in the city, except when you run. Everyone am extremely grateful to have you all here. I hope everyone can buy whatever they think is important in the following auction. When Run didn't speak much. However, her charming face made everyone feel as if they had bathed in a spring breeze, and every bit of resentment had been dispelled from their hearts. Now we're going to auction today's first item. It's a sage-level inner armor. This sage-level inner armor is a bit damaged. However, its defensive power is far greater than that of those pseudo-sage tools. So, one would have much more assurance when they would go for the treasure hunt in Great Gas Collar if they had this inner armor. One Irin calmly said. The starting bid for this sage-level inner armor is 70 million primary spirit dawn. This inner armor made all the experts who were sitting below go crazy. After all, many among them wanted to go to the Great Gas Collar. There were semi-sage and sage experts among them. However, it didn't matter what kind of strength they possessed or what their cultivation was. Everyone knew what kind of place the Great Gas Collar was. It was considered as an extremely dangerous place. After all, one could lose their life on the spot if they weren't cautious enough. Therefore, one must increase their strength as much as possible before venturing there. The divine tools were mere accessories. However, they could be regarded as a part of one's strength. Many among these people were still using pseudo-sage tools, since the sage tools were rare. And this was a very rare kind of divine tool. It was certainly a bit damaged. However, countless people would still chase after it like ducks. 2 young girls who were clad in revealing attires came up on stage with a metallic tray. These 2 young girls would have certainly attracted the attention of a lot of people earlier. However, no one paid any attention to them at this time. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the tray that had been covered by a red cloth. That cloth was also a divine tool, which had cut off other people's divine senses. Therefore, they couldn't use their divine senses in order to see what was inside it. A snow-white inner armor appeared in front of everyone, as when Run lifted the red cloth. This inner armor was faintly emitting sage power. It had unleashed a unique coercion that could be classified as the embodiment of anger. However, one corner of the inner armor was broken. There was a huge hole at that place. It seemed as if it had been drilled with a sharp weapon. This Great Gas Chamber of Commerce has brought out a sage tool in the beginning of the auction. Naturally, there is no need to say that they are rich and overbearing. It's well known that many sage experts don't have sage tools, and even some great sage experts use pseudo-sage tools. So, it is clear that there is a shortage of sage tools these days. This sage tool is damaged. However, the price of a rare divine tool like this inner armor can't be any less. In fact, it can't be under the price of general sage tools. Yishuan secretly thought. Then he swept out his divine sense and found out that this snow-white inner armor had been made of the skin of a snake-type demon beast. However, he couldn't find out which demon beast it was. This type of inner armor would have attracted his attention in the past. However, his gilded tyrant form itself was the best defense. So, this inner armor would be useless if even his tyrant body wasn't able to resist an attack. Moreover, this inner armor would be even more useless if his tyrant body was able to resist the attack. Therefore, he had always been dismissive about such defense-type divine tools. In fact, it would be better to buy some attack-type tools instead. However, he looked at Xiaoya, who was beside him. She was much more fragile than him, since she was merely an expert of the Xiantian realm. And even a slight negligence on his part could cause a huge disaster. So he opened his mouth and shouted, 75 million! To be continued. Chapter 540. 100 million. A loud shout suddenly overshadowed Yi Zaiwen's voice. Yi Shiwen carefully listened. Isn't this dominating Heaven Dojo's King Tai? Who's spending such a huge amount? Someone asked with unsurely. Who else can it be other than King Tai? Gee, he is willing to spend this much for one run. What do you mean? Many people's ears erected suddenly. They had become curious. You guys are outsiders. Maybe that's why you don't know about this matter. However, who in our great gas city doesn't know that King Tai has been courting Wen Run for 10 years now? Moreover, his infatuation with Wen Run hasn't decreased one bit. He targets the first and last auction items whenever Wen Run hosts the auction. He must take them, and it's a dead end for anyone who dares to challenge him. Yi Shiwen pondered secretly. It's no wonder that everyone is standing still, and that they haven't shouted the price for a long time. Initially, he had believed that everyone must be considering chances of profit and loss. After all, it wasn't a good deal to purchase a damaged Sage-level inner armor for 70 million primary spirit dawn. However, it had also occurred to him that different people should have had different views. A Sage tool would cost approximately 100 million primary spirit dawn. In fact, a good quality Sage tool might even get sold for 200 to 300 million primary spirit dawn. However, it would get sold for that much only, and not more than that. So, a Sage-level inner armor would cost approximately 200 million. This inner armor's starting bid was 70 million. However, it could clearly be seen that it was seriously damaged. So, some discount must be given on its price. In fact, it would be better to purchase a new one than having to repair it. Moreover, it must also be considered whether one has an urgent requirement of this divine tool or not. You're buying this inner armor for the girl? Yi Mo's voice reverberated inside Yi Zaiwen's mind. Yes. Yi Shiwen nodded. I don't need it since I have Tyrant Body. Tyrant Body is stronger than anything else. However, she is not that strong. So, she might have to suffer disastrous consequences if she's not prepared for the upcoming battles. But it's broken. Are you planning to buy some materials to patch it as well? Yi Mo asked. Yi Shiwen nodded. His level of refining tools wasn't even close to that of those real great masters who used to refine tools. However, his skill couldn't be compared with an average person either. So, mending an inner armor wasn't an issue for him. Yes, he'll buy some materials in the auction. Yi Shiwen replied. He possessed a large number of heavenly treasures. However, most of them were raw materials for alchemy. So, he had very few materials for refining tools. Gentlemen and friends, let me have this inner armor. I want it. King Tai's voice was loud and clear like the sound of a big bell. However, his polite words had a strong hint of pressure. In fact, the threatening intention was very profound. 105 million, Yi Shiwen shouted softly. His voice sounded very clear in this quiet auction site. Everyone was left dumbstruck by this. Who is this audacious person? He has dared to compete against a person like King Tai. Does he have a death wish? King Tai frowned inside his private room. He hadn't met such a daring person for a long time. After all, everyone respected him since he enjoyed a very high status. So, it didn't even matter what his strength was. Who would dare to ignore the chief disciple of the dominating Heaven Dojo? 110 million! King Tai shouted once again. This amount was more than enough for a damaged inner armor. So he became a bit distressed, and an ominous light flickered in his eyes. King Tai didn't know who this stranger was, so he couldn't even look down on him. However, this price had made him somewhat distressed. A Sage tool would approximately cost 100 million primary spirit dawn, and there were many Sage experts who had never possessed a Sage tool. So, one could imagine what the real worth of these 100 million primary spirit dawn was. In fact, there had been many Sage experts who hadn't been able to gather this much money in their entire lifetime. It hadn't been very easy to gather so much wealth even for King Tai, and he wouldn't have spent such a huge amount of money and suffered such a heavy loss if he didn't want to impress when he run. 110 million won. One E-Run revealed a pleasant smile on her face. It was a good thing for the Chamber of Commerce that people were competing to buy this commodity. She had been afraid that nobody would compete for it. She knew that King Tai, came every time she hosted the auction in order to impress her. However, she wanted someone to dare and compete against him. 110 million to 115 million. Yi Shiwen suddenly shouted from his private room when everyone had been thinking that he had given up. Oh! Suddenly, everyone went into an uproar. Yi Ziwen's act had been unconscious in the beginning. However, what about now? It had to be intentional this time. It was evident that he didn't give importance to King Tai. Who is this man? Do you know this man? He's very bold. He isn't giving face to King Tai. Someone said in disbelief. Does he have a death wish? King Tai has an ominous reputation. He can kill anyone who dares to disobey him. This man is safe inside the territory of Great Gas Chamber of Commerce right now. However, it will be very difficult for this man to get out of Great Gas City alive. He is very courageous. However, unfortunately, he isn't far from his death. No one was optimistic about Yi Shiwen. They didn't think that he could escape from King Tai's hands. Yi Shiwen was following the path of his doom, in their opinion. 130 million, King Tai exclaimed in a loud voice. The speed of response was very quick. He didn't fall below Yi Shiwen. Go and find which man is daring to snatch my stuff. He is courting death. King Tai ordered one of his aides. His complexion had turned fierce. I won't let him live. I'll kill him, and then use his heart and liver to prepare a meal. An ordinary person would have gotten scared to death if they had heard King Tai's vicious words. However, the countenances of the experts by his side didn't change. It was clear that they had seen King Tai's barbaric attitude many times in the past. Yes, young lord, a weak-looking expert answered. He then opened the door and went out. Yi Shiwen didn't know what was happening in King Tai's private room. However, he wouldn't have cared even if he had known. He didn't need to worry. After all, he could escape even if a great sage expert confronted him. And he could kill anyone as long as they weren't a great sage expert. Of course, he could do so only with the aid of the blood slave, since it controlled a star colossus. 135 million. Yi Shiwen shouted. His voice seemed direct and effective. It didn't show any signs of weakness either. However, he had become worried since his limit was 150 million. He wouldn't be able to continue if the bid surpassed this amount. After all, he wanted to get a good deal out of this auction. Otherwise, it would be better to go and buy a new inner armor instead of spending this much money on a damaged one. King Tai wanted to impress when he ran. However, Yi Shiwen neither had such a desire, nor was he a foolish spendthrift. Moreover, primary spirit Dawn had flown out of his hand like running water because of his mysterious space. Many sage experts might not have earned the amount of money that he had already spent. However, he didn't have any regrets about doing so, since it was something he should have spent his money on. He had spent his money on himself. But that didn't mean that he was a spendthrift. Good, very good. King Tai smirked. He smiled through his anger. He had been famous for many years, and nobody had ever dared to disregard him like this. A look which was as fierce as a beast's appeared in his eyes when he smiled. He's very bold. However, I can't let him walk away from this city alive. King Tai smiled instead of being angry. I'll let him have it if he wants it so badly. However, I've sent someone to keep watch. So, I'm not giving up yet. I want everyone to see the end of this person who has dared to disobey me. King Tai hadn't become hostile and killed Yi Shiwen on the spot because it was when Yi Ren's territory. However, this didn't mean that he would let go of a guy who had dared to go against him. King Tai didn't continue to compete with Yi Shiwen, and this was against everyone's expectations. After all, he had given up on the face of it. However, those who were familiar with King Tai's nature knew that he would take his revenge after the auction. King Tai isn't speaking up. Are the legends about him false? They're not false. That boy is done for. He shouldn't have dared to compete with King Tai in this manner. After all, King Tai is always ready when it comes to killing people and robbing their possessions. Someone who was very familiar with King Tai smiled disdainfully and said, many people had found this whole incident of someone opposing King Tai very entertaining. However, that was only until the end of the auction. This incident would stop mattering rather quickly for everyone else apart from Yi Shiwen. Many other items appeared one by one after Yi Shiwen had obtained the inner armor. Medicinal pills, divine tools, demon beasts' inner cores, and even demon beasts' eggs were sold in the auction. Basically, there were all kinds of extraordinary things. These things could rarely be seen on ordinary days. One could buy these things outside of this auction, but they would face great difficulty in doing so. Moreover, some of these things could only be purchased in such auctions. Those things streamed out like running water and were quickly sold. There were also various types of materials for refining tools. The auction finally came to an end after it had continued for an entire day. Yi Shiwen had also purchased many rare and precious raw materials, spirit fruits, and so on in this auction. He had spent over 50 million primary spirit dawn on these things. It could be said that he had also made a good harvest. The next and last item of this auction is 9-leafed dragon primary grass. This grass can heal the injuries sustained by the soul and raise it to higher level. It is a top-grade medicinal herb, and its base price is 100 million. When Eren explained, everyone held their breath. A mere medicinal herb was getting sold at the price of a sage tool. Moreover, this was only its base price. It wasn't clear what price it would be sold at if its price continued to increase during the auction. A person's soul sustained injuries in a fight only on rare occasions. However, it would be troublesome if that were to happen. The wounds on the body could be cured quite easily. After all, there were thousands of treatments for it. However, the ordinary methods couldn't be used for curing injuries sustained by the soul. The treatment scope of Yi Zaiwen's Phoenix regeneration technique would extend from curing just physical injuries to curing soul injuries once had advanced a step further. However, there was no way to cure soul injuries as per Yi Zaiwen's current level of Phoenix regeneration technique. Otherwise, he would have already treated Yi Mo, who had exhausted the primary essence of his own soul and had fallen into a deep sleep slumber. However, a medicinal herb had appeared that could heal souls. A bright light flashed in Yi Zaiwen's eyes. I must obtain it irrespective of the price that I must pay. To be continued. Chapter 541. Yi Mo had recovered more than halfway till now. However, he hadn't recovered completely. But he would recover very quickly if he got this 9-leaf dragon primary grass. And Yi Shiwen would get a strong assistance when that would happen. The ordinary experts who sat downstairs were whispering. However, not many of them could dare to open their mouths to place a bid. After all, the base price of this commodity was 100 million. So, they couldn't participate in this auction since they didn't have a lot of primary spirit dawn. In fact, a lot of experts couldn't collect this much wealth in their entire lifetime. Moreover, it would have been worthwhile to spend this much money if it were a sage tool. However, spending such a huge amount of money for 9-leaf dragon primary grass wasn't such a good idea, since it wasn't even certain whether it would ever come to use. Those ordinary experts looked toward those private rooms located on the second floor. Only those rich people who occupied those private rooms could afford this kind of price right now. 150 million. The first one to make a bid was King Tai. This was obviously expected. Everyone believed that he would snatch away the first and last commodities as long as when Eren hosted an auction. After all, he had the support of a colossus like dominating Heaven Dojo behind him. An ordinary person couldn't quote such a large price. However, when Eren never hosted an ordinary auction. So, King Tai didn't get many such opportunities. Many people held their breaths as they heard this bid. King Tai was the chief disciple of the dominating Heaven Dojo. So, he didn't care about wasting primary spirit dawn. He had increased the price by 50% in one fell swoop. I want this 9-leaf dragon primary grass, King Tai stated. His voice sounded ice-cold and a bit hoarse. It seemed as if a beast was proclaiming dominance in its territory. Moreover, there was a strong sense of threat in his tone. 200 million. Pardon me, but I also want to have some fun. I want this 9-leaf dragon primary grass. A chilly voice came from a private room at this time. Isn't this Sky Moonsword School's young Master Tianjin? Why does he want to take part in this game? Does he want to compete with King Tai? Somebody soon found out that this voice belonged to young Master Tianjin. Young Master Tianjin was one of the four heroes of the Great Gas City. Many people became excited as a result. They had enjoyed watching Yi Shiwen and King Tai competing with each other a while back. But young Master Tian Jian's bid had made them even more excited. A contest that involved two of the four heroes would always attract people's attention the most, and would become a hot topic for discussion. After all, these four heroes were the future leaders of the four forces of the Great Gas City. 210 million. King Tai clenched his teeth and said, 200 million primary spirit dawn had already surpassed the genuine price of the 9-leaf dragon primary grass. Moreover, King Tai couldn't spend money so extravagantly even if he was the chief disciple of the dominating Heaven Dojo. An ominous light flickered in his eyes, and he secretly became furious. The first item had been taken by someone else, and now he had to compete for the last one too. 220 million. Young Master Tian Jian shouted. Both of them had clearly become careful after the price had increased to 200 million. So, they weren't raising the bid by a large amount anymore. Bastard. King Tai had become very angry. The young Master Tian Jian wanted to oppose him today. Wan Yi was the only woman among the four heroes of the Great Gas City, and she didn't have any conflict with the others. The city government's eldest young master remained aloof from the other three heroes. So, only these two men had a conflict with each other among the four heroes. They would obstruct each other's path whenever they got the opportunity. King Tai hadn't made his bid when a loud and clear voice sounded. 250 million. King Tai instantly recognized this voice. Isn't this the same guy who competed for the first item with me? Yi Shiwen had placed several bids so far, but he had been very low-key. So, King Tai had almost forgotten about Yi Shiwen after young Master Tian Jian's bid. He had also forgotten about teaching Yi Shiwen a lesson. However, Yi Shiwen had dared to challenge him again now. Therefore, King Tai's believed that Yi Shiwen was courting death this time. Everyone was left dumbstruck. Someone had dared to interfere in these two men's contest. They too had obviously recognized this voice. Isn't this the same guy who had competed for the first item? Everyone had become excited, and it seemed as if a boiler had suddenly exploded. Moreover, the price had increased to 250 million. So, it was clear that this mysterious person was as wealthy as the other two contenders. Yi Shiwen had spent more than 200 million already, and he had quoted 250 million this time. So, he had at least 450 to 500 million primary spirit dawn. Some people gasped after they made this calculation. Only the top experts of Sage Realm, or the ones who had entered the Great Sage Realm, could possess a wealth of 450 million. In fact, this figure was enough to be the net worth of a great sage expert. Young Master Tian Jian's and King Tai's confidence had stemmed from the forces that backed them. They had spent millions once or twice because of this backing. But what was the background of this man? Could he also be a disciple of some superforce? This was also a possibility. The Great Gas Collar was about to open. So, experts from all parts of the River Shore star field had arrived here. Some experts of neighboring star regions had also arrived. So, it couldn't be considered strange if a disciple of some superforce had also arrived. In fact, everything would make sense if it was so. Of course, they didn't know that Yi Shiwen was alone. Otherwise, they would have gotten scared to death. There were never enough primary spirit dawn for Yi Shiwen. He would soon use up whatever he had earned. The mysterious space was like a mega beast. It would soon swallow his entire wealth like a bottomless pit. However, he couldn't separate it from himself. True Martial University had much more resources as compared to these forces of the Great Gas City. However, Yi Ziwen's current status in the True Martial University wasn't on the same level as that of these people in their respective forces. Naturally, he couldn't freely spend the entire force's resources like them. That's intriguing. Young Master Tian Jian slightly raised the corner of his mouth inside his private room. He had begun to take some interest in this man who had interfered in his contest with King Tai. After all, such a man could either be a big idiot or have some serious backing. He preferred to believe the latter. After all, how could an idiot possess so much wealth? Such a person would have already been robbed by someone in this world full of powerful people. 260 million. King Tai quoted his renewed price. However, everyone could tell that he was extreme enraged. Blood dripped in his heart. 260 million primary spirit dawn was an astronomical figure. However, he had no choice but to quote this price since he didn't wish to lose face in front of Wen Yirun. 300 million. Yi Shiwen stated without batting an eye. This 9-leaf dragon primary grass was extremely important for Yi Mo's recovery. So, he had to get it even if he had to spend the entire amount of primary spirit dawn that he had in his stock. Yi Shiwen had given many sage tools to Yi Mo to swallow. The total cost of those sage tools surpassed 2 billion primary spirit dawn. So, he obviously wouldn't regret spending a few million more. It could be said that he was always short of money. So, he had always faced the shortage of primary spirit dawn during his cultivation. However, it must also be said that he was rich when there was a need to be. He could spend as much money as was required if he considered the cause to be important. Yi Zaiwen's bid blew everyone away. This person had to be a rich lord. The other bidders were also considered rich, but they were increasing the price by 10 million at a time. However, this man was increasing the price by 50 million at a time. It seemed that this person had recently acquired a lot of wealth, and that money wasn't money for him. It seemed as if it was merely a pile of papers. Even when Yirun was astonished by Yi Zaiwen's bid. She had been hosting auctions for many years now. So, it wasn't that she hadn't seen a lot of rich men. However, she had seen such an extremely extravagant rich man for the first time. Everyone wants it so desperately. So, I must behave like a gentleman, and I mustn't snatch what they want. I withdraw. Young Master Tian Jin spoke up in a nonchalant manner. Damn it, this guy was only messing with me. King Tai was secretly tensed. Young Master Tian Jin was only messing with him. After all, he knew that King Tai wouldn't want to lose face in front of Wen Yirun. Therefore, he had forced him to bleed a huge amount of money. 310 million. King Tai almost roared this time. Bastard, bastard. I must kill him. He has forced me to spend so much money. The sound of King Tai's roar reverberated inside his private room. Many of his subordinates hid far from him. They didn't dare to come near him. It would certainly be disastrous if his wrath fell upon them. A feeling of intense hate for Yi Shiwen and young Master Tian Jin had surged inside King Tai's heart at this time. 350 million. Yi Shiwen spoke up. However, his voice was calm. There was no hint of hesitation in it, as if this price was practically nothing for him. He could have spent his entire wealth for Yi Mo's recovery. However, he didn't want to behave like a local tyrant. This King Tai wanted to buy this last item of the auction at all costs because he wanted to act as a very wealthy person in front of Wen Yirun. Perhaps he would have trailed after Yi Zaiwen's bids unceasingly if Yi Shiwen had increased the bid by 10 million at a time. And then, Yi Shiwen might have had to pay a lot more. Therefore, Yi Shiwen believed that he could force King Tai to quit only by acting as a rich person. In fact, King Tai would have continued to compete if Yi Shiwen had acted timidly. King Tai's complexion had turned a deep shade of red. Bastard, I will crush you along with your wealth. King Tai used to crush his competitors using his wealth. However, he himself had been made speechless by someone who had used the power of money. This had happened to him for the first time in his life. King Tai didn't have any choice but to quit since he only had 300 million primary spirit dawn. And that too after adding the primary spirit dawn of the dominating heaven dojo. In fact, he wouldn't have been able to increase the bid so crazily without the dominating heaven dojo's backing. He had been distressed at first because the price of the last item had become too high. Therefore, he would have had to spend a large amount of primary spirit dawn to buy the item. However, he had become even more distressed now, and that was because he couldn't increase the price anymore. So, he felt that he had lost face in front of Wen Yirun, and he hated Yi Shiwen even more because of this. Yi Shiwen had stunned everyone. A lot of people had started to speculate about his identity. Where has this local tyrant arrived from? He is so wealthy that he is throwing away money recklessly. They wouldn't have been left dumbstruck if Yi Shiwen had increased the price by 10 million at a time. However, he had increased the bid by a large amount every time. This had blown everyone away. King Tai didn't raise the bid any further, and this last item smoothly fell into Yi Zaiwen's lap. The auction had finally come to an end. However, numerous experts were still excited. After all, they had thought that King Tai, or young Master Tianjin, would play the leading role in this auction. However, they hadn't expected that someone would appear in the middle of their contest and would snatch away the limelight. Yi Shiwen quietly went backstage along with Xiaoya while everyone was still discussing spiritedly. After all, he wanted to receive the things that he had bought in the auction. To be continued. Chapter 542. Yi Shiwen arrived at the backside of the room. He was surprised to see the silhouette of a familiar person. That person was none other than Yin Yunting. She was chatting nonstop with Wen Yirun. Sister Wen, I have arrived in order to ask you whether you have any information about the green-scaled fruit. Yin Yunting asked. We have already been paying attention to this matter. We will surely hand over the green-scaled fruit to you once we find it. Wen Yirun replied. Yi Shiwen saw both of them talking and laughing. It seemed that they were very familiar with each other. However, he hadn't expected that. After all, Wen Yirun and Yin Yunting didn't share the same social status. Young Master Yi, Yin Yunting became happy the moment she saw that Yi Shiwen there as well. And she became even more excited when she saw that Xiaoya had also come. Xiaoya didn't appear to be intimately acquainted with her, but that hadn't hindered her fondness for Xiaoya. In fact, she became excited every time she looked at Xiaoya. I didn't expect to see you here. Yi Shiwen was very surprised. However, he was even more surprised to see the relationship between Yin Yunting and Wen Yirun. How has Villa Lord Yin allowed you come alone? Yi Shiwen asked. He hadn't expected that Yin Hong Yi would send his daughter instead of coming by himself. My daddy hasn't recovered from his injuries yet. Even my mother is unwell. So, it's just me in the end. Yin Yunting let out a chuckle. Suddenly, a shadow appeared in front of Yi Shiwen, and he raised his head to see who it was. It was Wen Yirun. So, you are that young Master Yi Yin Yunting had mentioned about. Wen Yirun lightly stepped forward. Then, she let out a smile and said. Yi Shiwen shot a glance at Yin Yunting. He didn't know what capacity he had been introduced to Wen Yirun in. Yes, it's nice to meet you, Lady Wen. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands in obeisance and replied. Young Master Yi is outstanding. Even King Tai suffered a loss at your hands. Wen Yirun slightly smiled and said. She possessed a peculiar charm. It wasn't my intention to compete with him. I needed those things. Yi Shiwen lightly replied. King Tai believed that Yi Shiwen had made him lose face. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care about that since he hadn't opposed King Tai on purpose. Wen Yirun's wonderful pair of eyes scanned Yi Zaiwen's body. Then she chuckled and said, King Tai isn't a nice person. He may come after you. You can seek help from our Chamber of Commerce in case you need it. After all, this matter has started in our Chamber of Commerce. Wen Yirun said. She knew how King Tai's attitude was. So, she warned Yi Shiwen, as well as offered her assistance in the matter. Yi Shiwen was somewhat surprised by this. King Tai had an infatuation for Wen Yirun. However, Wen Yirun didn't seem to have a very good opinion of him. There will be no need for that. I only wish to take away the items that I've bought. However, I would like to borrow a place in your Chamber of Commerce for closed-door training. Yi Shiwen said. He had decided that he would carry out closed-door training to make the breakthrough into the late stage of Sage Realm once the auction had ended. It's not a problem. I will ask someone to make arrangements for you. Wen Yirun nodded. This matter was nothing for her. Yi Shiwen had spent millions of primary spirit dawn in their Chamber of Commerce. So, this matter was nothing compared to what he had done. However, she was still looking at him. She had maintained a smiling expression at the corner of her mouth this whole time. He has spent so much. Undoubtedly, he must be thinking of having a bit of protection from the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce. He's not an idiot. He must know that he has offended King Tai very much. Yi Shiwen wasn't afraid of King Tai. However, he needed time until he had made the breakthrough into the late stage of Sage Realm. he wouldn't have to be afraid of King Tai at that time, even if he didn't use the Star Colossus. Boy, I've finally found you. Now, you must accept your death like an obedient kid. A coarse and wild roar came from not far away. A group of people arrived from around the corner. They were headed by King Tai. Yi Shiwen saw King Tai's tall figure. His coarse and wild aura resembled that of a beast. His pair of red eyes was glaring at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that a dangerous divine sense had locked upon him. It was like a warning sign before a beast throws itself towards its prey. It's such a wonderful coincidence that Lady Wen is also present here. King Tai's gaze fell on Wen Yirun, who was beside Yi Shiwen. So, he restrained his murderous aura, and a smile appeared on his face. But it seemed as if a beast was smiling. It looked bizarre. I don't know why young Master King has arrived here. Have you arrived here to collect the items that you bought in the auction? Don't worry. Our people will deliver it at the dominating Heaven Dojo. Wen Yirun let out an engaging smile as she spoke to this well-known old friend of hers. A fierce look appeared on King Tai's face as he heard this. He then said, Wen Yirun, I think you know of my temperament and habit. No one can save the person whom I wish to kill. This boy is going to die. Wen Yirun knew this very well. However, she couldn't let King Tai prevail. After all, the reputation of their great gas chamber of commerce would get ruined if a person had to face retaliation for having purchased some things from their auction. In fact, no one would dare to buy anything from their chamber of commerce if such news spread in the city. I'm sorry, but this is our chamber of commerce. I'm sure that you're familiar with the rules of our chamber of commerce. No one can touch our guests inside our territory. The smile vanished from Wen Yirun's face as she coldly replied. King Tai's complexion turned ashen. He hadn't expected that Wen Yirun would come out in Yi Ziwen's protection. He started to burn with rage because of this. Was their 100-years-old friendship inferior to this boy who had come from God knows where? He took a few steps while looking at Yi Shiwen. However, he was surprised to see that Yi Shiwen merely stood at his place with a seemingly unaffected attitude. In fact, he didn't give King Tai any attention whatsoever. He had only created a ring of real elemental energy around Xiaoya for her protection. And he had isolated her from King Tai's gaze in this way. A gaze could also kill a person. This wasn't a fable for the real powerhouses. Good, very good. You are merely an insignificant expert of the intermediate stage of Sage Realm. And you have still dared to oppose me. So, you're very ambitious and have the courage of a leopard. However, your days are numbered. Hide if you want to hide, but you won't be able to do so for long. You'll be safe only if you never step out of the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, you'll die. King Tai's complexion had turned dark. King Tai's beastly aura surged overwhelmingly as it rolled towards Yi Shiwen. It was enough to crush the imposing aura of an average sage expert of the intermediate stage of Sage Realm. However, Yi Shiwen stood calmly, as if King Tai's beastly aura hadn't affected him. King Tai had to restrain his aura in the end. After all, Wen Yirun was present there, and this place was the territory of Great Gas Chamber of Commerce. So, he must not act presumptuously. However, he shot a firm glance at Yi Shiwen. Then, he turned around and left. This uncle is so ferocious. Xiaoya grabbed the corner of the lower hem of Yi Ziwen's jacket and said, He looks like a mad dog fighting for food on the street. Xiaoya had said these words very innocently. After all, children's words carry no harm. However, Yi Shiwen started to laugh loudly. King Tai hadn't gone far when he abruptly came to a stop. However, he didn't take a step further for a while. Mad dog fighting for food on the street. King Tai's dark face burst with rage as he walked away from the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce along with the dominating Heaven Dojos. However, he had vowed that he would kill this boy of unknown origin in a brutal manner. Ha 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 ha! Yi Shiwen laughed wildly while holding his stomach. Xiaoya's single sentence had made the impact of 1,000 sentences. Xiaoya had spoken innocently. However, it was the most appropriate remark one could have made. Young Master Yi, I wanted to mediate between you and him. However, it seems that I've failed. King Tai won't forget this matter very easily. When Ren said, she looked a bit worried. I will crush him to death if he dares to cause trouble. Yi Shiwen replied indifferently. It seemed as if he was talking about a flea that he would crush to death. A look of surprise appeared on Wen Ren's face when she heard this. He'll crush him to death if he dares to cause trouble. Who would dare to speak such words about an extremely powerful person like King Tai? He has dared to say such a thing even though he knows about King Tai's status and power. And he doesn't seem to be foolish either. So, he must have some solid backing. She didn't believe that Yi Shiwen was a stupid person. That meant that he certainly had some strong backing. What is his background? Wen Ren was also slightly amazed. However, she didn't say much since it looked like Yi Shiwen had planned everything in advance. Anyway, he was not in danger as long as he was in the Chamber of Commerce. Yi Shiwen soon completed all the formalities. And he got the things that he had bought after he handed over the primary spirit dawn. Yi-mo, you should recover quickly with this 9-leaf dragon primary grass. Yi Ziwen's heart had been unburdened greatly after he had finally obtained the 9-leaf dragon primary grass. It was the most precious item for him among all the things that he had bought. He would have a powerful assistance once Yi-mo had recovered. So, he would have much more assurance if he left for the Great Gas Collar after that. He hadn't spent 400 million in a blind frenzy. The amount of money which ordinary sage experts couldn't earn in their entire lifetimes had been spent by him without thinking too much. So, he had probably come across as a spendthrift who wanted to become a local tyrant. And Wen Ren had perhaps come out for his protection because of this reason. Ah, I can finally get rid of this half-dead and half-alive state. Yi-mo laughed and said, however, you must be careful. King Tai isn't the friendly kind. He must be scheming against you, and can attack you anytime and anywhere. I know. However, my strength will increase significantly after I've made the breakthrough into the late stage of Sage Realm. At that time, they'll be able to urge the heavenly source mirror to thoroughly transform the soul of Star Colossus into the blood slave. Then, the Star Colossus body will exhibit even more might. Sooner or later, it will make the breakthrough into the great Sage Realm as well. And I'll be able to travel anywhere in this big world when that happens. Yi Shiwen said. He was certainly aware of King Tai's threat. However, he would follow his own plan for now. Then, I will crush King Tai to death if he dares to cause trouble, Yi Shiwen stated in a cold voice. Wen Ren didn't make Yi Shiwen wait for a long time. Soon, she had a secret chamber tidied up for Yi Ziwen's closed-door training. This hadn't been a difficult thing for her due to the influence of Great Gas Chamber of Commerce. Yi Shiwen placed Xiaoya inside the heavenly source mirror in order to prepare against contingencies. Then, he laid out layers of barrier formations inside the secret chamber. This would buy him enough time to wake up in case something happened. This represented the so-called saying don't do harm to others, but don't allow others to do harm to you either. After all, he hadn't been familiar with the Chamber of Commerce to a great extent. Yi Shiwen sat down on a mat and began the closed-door training after he had made all the preparations. To be continued. Chapter 543. Yi Shiwen sat cross-legged on the mat. The enlightening mind ancient tree had fully flexed itself, and the divine rays that hung down from the tree had completely shrouded him. So many years had passed, but the enlightening mind ancient tree had grown barely a few inches. It was hard to say how much time it would take for it to grow to the level mentioned in the fables. Yi Ziwen's chaotic and distracting thoughts had gotten suppressed since he was shrouded by the divine rays of the enlightening mind ancient tree. So his mind had become clear and calm now. The observing person scripture had begun to operate crazily within his body. The star power had started to boil inside his universe. His universe looked like an ocean full of stars at the moment. The real elemental energy flowed through his entire body. It could be said that Yi Ziwen's foundation was extremely profound. Many of the experts who had been cultivating for several hundred years did not have a foundation as profound as his. He might not have been able to break the norms and challenge experts that were several stages higher than him if his foundation hadn't been so profound. Therefore, he wasn't worried at present. It seemed that things would naturally take their course. The primary spirit dawn were burning unceasingly inside the heavenly source mirror. After that, they were gradually transforming into a long stream of spirit energies and were channeling inside his body. He was absorbing these spirit energies, transforming them into real elemental energy, and then attacking the barrier of the late stage of Sage Realm, using this real elemental energy. He put his whole effort and didn't hold back even a bit. The observing person scripture was working at a crazy speed. It didn't stop even for a moment. The small universe was also frantically spinning inside his body. Those spirit energies derived from burning the primary spirit dawn were issuing buzzing sounds and were gradually being absorbed by him. This seemingly endless supply of spirit energies was a big aid for Yi Shiwen. He didn't even need to convert them into a suitable form of energy for absorption. He needed the support of these spirit energies if he wanted his small universe to expand and grow bigger. The spirit energies gradually entered his small universe. Consequently, the small universe inside his body began to expand inch by inch. The solar system inside his body had fully taken shape. Moreover, it would improve every time he made a breakthrough. So, it would obviously improve by leaps and bounds when he'd make the breakthrough into the great Sage Realm. His real elemental energy gradually advanced towards the barrier of the late stage of Sage Realm under the shower of the spirit energies. Earlier, it had been difficult to advance towards the barrier. However, it had suddenly become a lot easier due to the support of the spirit energies. It seemed that an endless flood of spirit energies had broken out of a dam. A page of the ancient scripture was emanating dazzling divine rays above Yi Ziwen's head. It seemed as if an ancient voice had been reading aloud these scriptures since forever. Meanwhile, Yi Shiwen was trying to gradually break through the shackles and advance in a stronger direction. Time passed day by day, and 2 months had come to pass soon enough. An increasing number of people had arrived in the Great Gas City as the time for opening of Great Gas Collar was getting increasingly close. So, the Great Gas City had become even more lively and crowded. The Great Gas Collar had spouted an increasing number of divine treasures with the 7th, 8th, and 9th vibrations. And an increasing number of rumors about Great Gas Collar had also started to circulate. A large number of experts had arrived inside the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce as the time for the opening of Great Gas Collar was very close. Yi Shiwen also knew of these developments. He was submerged in the closed-door training. However, he had left a part of his soul outside for keeping watch on the affairs. Therefore, he knew of everything that was happening outside. Half year's time seemed to have passed within the blink of an eye. Yi Shiwen had been inside the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce for more than half a year. In a room inside the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce, young Master Yi has been undergoing closed-door training for more than half a year. Why hasn't he come out yet? Yin Yunting said somewhat anxiously. The Great Gas Collar will open soon. It would be very difficult for him to reach the Great Gas Collar in time if it continues like this. You need to be patient. It's useless to worry. There is no problem even if he goes there a bit late, as I will also go to Great Gas Collar this time in order to get the green scaled fruit for your mother's treatment. I will certainly help you in finding it. When Yi Run comforted Yin Yunting, she wasn't worried about when Yi Shiwen would come out. Thanks, Elder Sister Wen. Yin Yunting relaxed a bit. Suddenly, it seemed as if the entire world was left to shake. An earth-shattering sound came from afar and shook the entire space. The atmosphere in the vicinity of the Great Gas Collar had agitated. All the experts were stunned. The Great Gas Collar has opened. The 9th vibration is over. 1 year. I've been waiting for this for 1 year. Finally, this Great Gas Collar is open now. The experts in the Great Gas City had become very excited. Countless experts transformed into streamers of light and flew towards the Great Gas Collar. Elder Sister Wen, what should we do now? It has opened. Yin Yunting asked somewhat anxiously. She had known that it was about to open soon. That was why she had been worried and couldn't wait for Yi Shiwen to come out. There's no need to wait for him. I will ask someone to deliver a message to him. We must be the first ones to reach there. We can't fall behind the others. Yin Young Ting decisively said. I don't know when he will come out of the closed-door training, but we don't have much time. All right. Yi Shiwen had also felt that fierce vibration inside the secret underground chamber. He realized that the great gas collar must have opened. However, he couldn't afford to get distracted right now. After all, the small sun at the center of his universe was becoming increasingly hot. This wasn't the real sun. Rather, the true power of sun in his small universe had barely condensed inside his body as of yet. Basically, this was the representation of the light sources inside his body. And it was the point of origin of all power sources in his universe. Yi Shiwen had arrived at a crucial moment. He had been attacking the barrier for more than half a year. So, it had become very thin, and he was only one strike away from breaking the barrier and entering the late stage of Sage Realm now. He had burnt more than 300 million primary spirit dawn in this half year's time. Every strike on the barrier had consumed more than 10 million primary spirit dawn. Other people would be shocked to the core if they came to know about this. In fact, they would rain curses on him for being such a spendthrift. He had attacked the barrier at least 30 times in the past 6 months. However, it hadn't broken. His foundation was extremely strong. So, the barrier was also very strong. In fact, it was 100 times stronger than that of an ordinary person. A lot of power was needed for each of his strikes on the barrier. Therefore, a huge amount of primary spirit dawn had been burning non-stop in order to provide him that unceasing supply of energy. He had used up a huge amount of primary spirit dawn. However, he had become habituated to this. His wealth came quickly and also went quickly. But this price was nothing if he could enhance his strength. However, Yi Shiwen would never give up his profound foundation to decrease the problems in making a breakthrough. Yi Shiwen exhaled a breath. Those energies had been condensed into a picture, a star chart to be precise. And it seemed that a world itself had been condensed out of nowhere during this breath, as if done by a legendary god from the fables. If he said there is light, then there is light. Yi Shiwen inhaled one breath and absorbed the entire star chart. Then he spouted it. Then he inhaled it once again and spat it out again. He repeated this process a number of times. It became bigger and better every time Yi Shiwen inhaled it and spat it out. Bang! An imposing aura suddenly burst out of Yi Shiwen's body. It was 10 times more potent than his aura from before. Yi Shiwen felt that his entire power had surged out in full swing. He had finally entered the late stage of Sage Realm. This feeling was indescribable. He felt that he could blow away a senior expert of Sage Great Perfection Realm with a single fist attack now. The real elemental energy had flooded his body and had finally overcome the obstacles. It had broken the barrier of the late stage of Sage Realm. Yi Shiwen's aura broke through the barrier formation and rushed towards the great gas chamber of commerce. He felt several tyrannical divine senses sweeping over there. They also swept over his body. However, a scarlet light suddenly surged out from inside his body and shrouded him. The heavenly source mirror had automatically protected its owner. Those divine senses swept over his body, but left one after another. One of those divine senses was that of a person whom when Yi Run had asked to pass on the message to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen knew that when Yi Run would have rushed to the Great Gas Collar by now. She also knew that she would have taken the people of Great Gas Chamber of Commerce with her. After all, it had been 3 days since the Great Gas Collar had opened. However, it didn't bother him since he didn't want to go there with Wen Yiren anyway. Being a solo operator was the best way for a person with so many secrets like him. Yi Shiwen was very happy. However, the biggest reason for his happiness wasn't his own progress. Instead, it was Yi Mo's full recovery. He had been wandering here and there all these years for Yi Mo's treatment since he had wanted to try all kinds of methods to do so. Yi Shiwen's biggest achievement in this more than half year's time was that he had helped Yi Mo in recovering his soul by giving him the 9-leaf dragon primary grass. Yimo's soul had completely recovered after refining and absorbing it for more than half-year. Moreover, Yimo's level had increased as well. It has been half-year. The great gas collar has finally opened, Yi Shiwen said. He was already late by 3 days. So, he didn't waste any time. He transformed into a streamer of light and flew out of the great gas chamber of commerce. The news of Yi Zaiwen's departure soon reached the dominating heavens dojo. Good. I have been waiting for you to come out, King Tai said in a cold voice and laughed. I knew that you wouldn't hide there for your entire life. King Tai's expression turned exceptionally sinister. His hatred for Yi Shiwen knew no bounds. After all, Yi Shiwen had made him lose face in front of Wen Yiren. King Tai's hadn't left for the great gas collar, even though it had opened. Instead, he had been waiting for Yi Shiwen to come out. The hatred in his heart would only disappear after he had brutally killed Yi Shiwen. To be continued. Chapter 544. My wait is finally over. That Yi Shiwen has come out of the turtle shell of the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce's protection. And he's going to die now? King Tai's hand trembled somewhat because of excitement. He had waited for almost half-year for this day. He wanted to tear Yi Shiwen into shreds so that he could make a meal out of him. King Tai had been rescued from the lair of the star beasts when he was younger. However, he himself had transformed into a beast after staying in that lair. He didn't feel like a beast on ordinary days. However, he would transform into a beast if he became angry. Yi Shiwen had left the Great Gas City. His journey towards the Great Gas Collar had been smooth so far. However, he frowned at this moment since the entire place seemed too quiet. He knew about the dominating Heaven Dojo's influence. So, he knew that the news of his departure from the Great Gas Chamber of Commerce couldn't be concealed. However, everything looked very quiet right now. And this seemed strange to him. Was King Tai's such a generous person that he would let him go this time? It wasn't possible. Even King Tai wouldn't have believed it if someone had said this to him. Yi Shiwen believed that King Tai was the kind of person who would take revenge even for a small grievance. After all, he had arrived after the auction to kill him because he had snatched away his items in the auction. Such a lawless man could dare to do anything. The more powerful a person is, the more likely it is for them to become lawless. Nothing could be done about this. Who would want to talk about equality with weaklings? Who would want to talk about giving them respect? Whoosh! 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 An incomparably sharp sound of breaking of space was suddenly heard as dozens of spear-like long arrows arrived while piercing the vast space. They surrounded Yi Shiwen from all sides, thereby blocking off his escape routes. It was clear that this extremely proficient attack had been well coordinated. The opposite party hadn't unleashed their attack in a disorganized manner. The heavenly source mirror ferociously emitted a scarlet light from Yi Zaiwen's body. It shrouded him and formed a scarlet boundary. Ding! 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 Those rushing arrows struck the scarlet barrier and issued metal-clanging sounds. They couldn't break the heavenly source mirror's defense. Go! Kill him! A loud shout came from inside the void. Subsequently, more than a dozen figures appeared in the space around Yi Shiwen. All of them were powerful sage experts with extremely tyrannical auras. In fact, the weakest among them were also at the intermediate stage of Sage Realm. They were headed by a middle-aged expert who had already entered the Sage Great Perfection Realm. Dominating Heaven Dojo, Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes, and his countenance turned serious. Those people had the Dominating Heaven Dojo's logo on their bodies. King Tai had sent more than a dozen sage experts. He certainly had a disposition of seeking revenge, even for a small grievance. Yi Shiwen had the strength of the intermediate stage of Sage Realm half-year ago. And King Tai didn't know that he had made a breakthrough in these 6 months. Still, he had sent a Sage Great Perfection level expert to stop him. He was either extremely cautious, or he had given Yi Shiwen too much importance. It seemed that he was still very much angry because of what had happened in the auction half-year ago. However, Yi Zaiwen's face exposed a trace of excitement. After all, he had recently made the breakthrough into the late stage of Sage Realm. so he needed people to practice his newly obtained powers on. Moreover, he hadn't fought with an expert of Sage Great Perfection realm yet. He is still smiling. Isn't he scared? An expert of the Dominating Heaven Dojo burst into laughter and said. He appeared to be somewhat crazy. The other experts also followed suit and burst into laughter. It's useless to pretend to be naive. You will die this time. Nobody can save a person whom our young lord wants to kill. You would have been safe if you were still hidden inside the great gas chamber of commerce. However, you will die since you've come out. The chief middle-aged expert who had reached the Sage Great Perfection realm said with a sinister grin on his face. Brothers, attack. We must give the head of this boy to the young lord when he arrives. That middle-aged expert's voice had barely faded when those experts of the Dominating Heaven Dojo attacked one after another. Different kinds of attacks swept out like waves. These grandiose attacks captured the entire space around Yi Shiwen. They swept all across and crushed the void. However, that expert of the Sage Great Perfection realm merely stood there with his arms folded across his chest. He didn't mean to interfere. What was Yi Shiwen in his opinion? He was an insignificant expert of the late stage of Sage realm. Nothing more. He differed from him by several levels. He had personally arrived here not because King Tai gave very much importance to Yi Shiwen or because King Tai was very much cautious. Rather, it was because he wanted to curry favor with King Tai, the future lord of the Dominating Heaven Dojo. Everyone in the dojo knew that King Tai was going to be the next lord. So, that expert of the Sage Great Perfection realm could enjoy endless wealth for several hundred years if he could curry favor with him. Many people in the dojo were under him because of his Sage Great Perfection level strength. So, he was regarded as a high-level person. In fact, the people of the dojo believed that the next lord of the dojo would have to rope him in. And this may have been true for average people. But this young lord was different. Everyone knew that this young lord had been captured by the star beasts in his childhood. Consequently, his temperament had become similar to that of a beast. He had been acting normal in these past years. However, that incident from his childhood had left a very profound imprint on him. His temperament had become incomparably violent, so much so that he would kill a person if that person disobeyed him. In fact, he would even eat their flesh later. This represented the so-called saying you will flourish if you obey and die if you disobey. So, it would certainly be better for that Sage Great Perfection level expert if he could improve his relation with such a young lord in advance. However, he had brought people along with him. After all, he didn't wish to do this job with his own hands since he believed that Yi Shiwen was unworthy to be his opponent. Huh! Yi Shiwen lightly shouted. A big hand stretched out, and a golden light scattered in the surroundings. Then, the big hand grabbed and extinguished the attacks of those experts of the Dominating Heaven Dojo. In fact, it appeared as if a big hand had smashed a group of ants. Ha! Consider yourself worthy to face us. 3 experts of the late stage of Sage Realm rode on a small 3-echelon formation to outflank him. The first expert had a sword scar on his face. His complexion looked sinister as he laughed furiously. These people had been following King Tai for a very long time now. So, they had also become somewhat violent and fierce. Those 3 men rode on the small 3-echelon formation with great coordination. This formation looked simple. However, it contained the power of countless Tao principles. It wasn't easy to produce and make variations in most of these matrix formations such as univariate formation, yin-yang formation, 3-echelon formation, and 4-elements formations. Moreover, these matrix formations must be used in coordination with the user in order to display the greatest might. This was especially true for these 3 small barriers which needed concentric offensives as well as defensives in order to display their might to the peak. Their might was equivalent to that of 3 senior experts of the late stage of Sage Realm at their peak. Even an expert of the Sage Peak Realm could contend against only 1 or 2 experts of the late stage of Sage Realm. So, the strength of these 3 small barriers was even greater than that of an expert of the Sage Peak Realm. It wasn't as exquisite as the 5 elements Great Barrier of the 5 Huang brothers. However, it was already enough for these three men who were quickly moving back and forth. The combined attack of the three men issued a strange fluctuation, and their murderous aura shook the entire universe as their offensive swept out towards Yi Shiwen like mighty tides. Heh. Yi Shiwen sneered. He looked like a god as he stood motionless in the middle of these violent attacks and allowed them to hit him. Finally, he moved, and a fist swept out. This fist then transformed into a big star and fell down on the small three-echelon formation. And the resulting scene looked like an image from a doomsday depiction. A terrifying force swept out in all directions. The space shook and ripped apart under the crushing pressure of this big star as dreadful waves of star power swept all across. The complexions of those three men changed significantly after Yi Zaiwen's fist swept out. They could feel this extremely terrifying force. The small three-echelon formation that they were riding on was unable to withstand this crushing blow, even with the help of its inbuilt heavenly principles. Such a dreadful brute force. How can this man be so powerful? This thought appeared in the minds of those three men. They had already entered the late stage of Sage Realm a long time ago. In fact, they weren't far from the Sage Peak Realm. So, an ordinary expert of late stage of Sage Realm wasn't a match for them. Moreover, they had attacked together while riding on the small three-echelon formation. They had never come across someone who could contend against them even after they had started to use the small three-echelon formation. However, they hadn't expected that this guy who had been at the intermediate stage of Sage Realm half-year ago could possess such terrifying strength at present. However, they had finally experienced Yi Zaiwen's incredible power at this time. The complexion of that chief middle-aged expert of the Sage Great Perfection Realm had also changed significantly by this time. He had realized that he had underestimated Yi Zaiwen's strength. Yi Zaiwen's strength was perhaps even more tyrannical than his. Stop! He couldn't continue to watch anymore and attacked promptly. Consequently, boundless divine beams suddenly swept out towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen's fist had transformed into a big star and had crushed the small three-echelons formation. Then, that dreadful fist pressure had slammed upon the bodies of those three men. The defensive divine tools on the bodies of those three men activated within a split second. However, they got disintegrated immediately after. The weakest expert among those three couldn't endure Yi Zaiwen's dreadful fist pressure. The pressure of that fist wasn't sharp. However, it was as heavy as a giant mountain. That man got crushed by the enormous pressure. He screamed loudly, and blood gushed out from every pore of his body. His skin wasn't able to endure the tremendous pressure and ruptured as a result. His entire body was covered with blood at the moment. He looked like a person made of blood. Those other two men attacked at this time. They had finally understood that Yi Shiwen was far more powerful than what they had imagined. He had looked like an expert of the late stage of Sage Realm. However, they had come to realize how stupid they had been after they had started to fight him. After all, they would have killed him by now if he was an ordinary expert of the late stage of Sage Realm. A terrified look appeared in their eyes. They were thinking about the legendary Heaven's Pride experts who could fight people who were much more powerful than them. Now, they could only wait for that expert of Sage Great Perfection Realm to arrive and save them. They had to put their entire effort and constrain this man till then. Otherwise, nobody among them would survive. The combined attack of the two men fell from above like a star river. It transformed into a whirlpool in the sky and swooped towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen stretched out his big hand. The golden light spread out in all directions. Then the big hand grabbed the star river and exploded it. Yi Shiwen shot another punch immediately after. It transformed into a big star and swept down. Bang! Suddenly, a massive explosion occurred. Both men trembled with horror under Yi Zaiwen's fist pressure. They tried to run away. However, they couldn't rival Yi Zaiwen's speed, and their heads got pounded upon by Yi Zaiwen's fist. Bang! Bang! Two muffled sounds were heard as their bodies got smashed by Yi Zaiwen's fist, and their blood got splattered in the space. To be continued. Chapter 545. Chapter 545. Cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Another expert of the late stage of Sage Realm had collapsed under the pressure of Yi Zaiwen's fist. The bones of his entire body had gotten crushed, and his soul had been shattered. It may have seemed that all of these things had happened over a long duration of time. However, all of it had happened within the blink of an eye. The attack of that middle-aged expert of Sage Great Perfection Realm finally arrived in front of Yishuan. His attack wasn't slow. It hadn't taken a long time to reach Yishuan. However, it seemed slow compared to Yi Zaiwen's extremely fast speed. Yi Zaiwen's devil wings weren't just a magical power. They also contained a cleverly crafted agility skill that made Yi Zaiwen's attacks as fast as lightning. It took a long time to describe everything. However, Yishuan had defeated these experts in an instant. Yishuan didn't blink his eyes as he faced the attack of that middle-aged expert of Sage Great Perfection Realm. A scarlet screen suddenly emerged from his body and appeared in front of him. Bang, a loud sound was heard. It seemed as if the heaven and the earth had collided. This had been a terrifying collision. It had given rise to a dreadful wave which had swept out and had smashed the vast space layer by layer. Everyone saw that Yishuan stood motionless into space as the shock waves dispersed. He looked incomparably outstanding. Damn it! The complexion of that middle-aged expert of Sage Great Perfection Realm changed. He hadn't expected that such a blunder would happen because of his late response. 3 Sage experts had died within a split second. It was a big loss. Losing 3 Sage experts could be considered as a disastrous loss, even for a colossal force like the dominating Heaven Dojo. There weren't many Sage experts in the universe. Moreover, it wasn't very easy to either create one or recruit one. Therefore, even the death of a single Sage expert was considered a significant loss. However, the dominating Heaven Dojo had lost 3 Sage experts in one fell swoop. The dojo lord wouldn't spare that middle-aged expert of Sage Great Perfection Realm if he returned without Yi Zaiwen's head. Kill him! The complexion of that middle-aged expert suddenly changed, and he shouted. The remaining 10 experts took out their long bows and knocked their arrows. Then, they shot their arrows towards Yishuan. Whiz! 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 A barrage of arrows cut through the vast space like a giant dragon and rushed towards Yishuan. Those experts had attacked with their entire strength. Their arrows formed a densely packed rain of arrow in the space. Yishuan coldly snorted while facing the approaching rain of arrow. Then, he shouted loudly, and the sound of the shout set off countless spirit energies. They appeared like an avalanche and swept out after they had transformed into divine beams. Those arrows weren't able to approach Yishuan. They had been shattered on the way by those divine beams. Whoosh! A figure penetrated through the dense rain of arrows and arrived in front of Yishuan. The middle-aged expert had taken advantage of the distraction caused by those arrows and had arrived near Yishuan. Boy, I will send you on your way. Damn it! You've dared to cause so much trouble for me. I will make sure that you die without a burial ground. The countenance of that middle-aged expert turned ice-cold as he looked at Yishuan. He had rushed over with a dreadful real elemental energy. Consequently, a terrifying power had swept out, and this had opened numerous cracks in the void. The scene looked unusually terrifying. That expert of the Sage Great Perfection Realm was only one step away from entering Sage Accomplished Realm. He was only one step away from attaining the highest level of the Sage Realm. Such a person had attacked with his entire strength. Obviously, his strength was incredibly dreadful. Bang! Yishuan stretched out his big hand and blocked the offense of that expert of the Sage Great Perfection Realm. You're very skillful. It's no wonder that you're so arrogant. However, you shouldn't have dared to oppose our young lord. You're like an ant in front of our dominating Heaven Dojo. A look of astonishment had appeared in the eyes of that middle-aged expert of Sage Great Perfection Realm. After all, he hadn't thought that Yishuan would be able to stop his attack. This was completely beyond his expectations. However, soon his complexion became even more sinister, and he rushed out at an even faster speed. Then his aura burst out of his body, formed a dreadful tide, and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. He then brandished his palm. It smashed down and shattered the void. He had attacked with his entire strength this time. He hadn't held back one bit. Bang! The palm of that middle-aged expert suddenly arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. However, it got stopped by a golden wall that had been formed by the mighty golden waves under Yi Zaiwen's feet. It seemed that two big stars had collided. Both men had unleashed insane powers, and their violent collision had set off energy waves that surged everywhere. The face of that middle-aged expert finally exposed a look of terror. Earlier, he hadn't attacked with his entire strength, and his attack had been stopped by Yi Shiwen. However, he had attacked with his entire strength this time, but he still couldn't shake Yi Zaiwen's defense. In fact, his attack had seemed useless. It seemed as if a moth had thrown itself into fire. "It's my turn now," Yi Shiwen sneered. His entire vitality surged out of his body. His golden divinities surged up into incredible divine waves and swept towards that middle-aged expert. Bang! That middle-aged expert wasn't able to escape, and the attack struck him head-on. Poof! He spouted a mouthful of blood, and his body went out flying upside down. In fact, his body had nearly gotten torn into two halves. Bang! Yi Shiwen didn't stop after that middle-aged expert went out flying. Instead, he rushed after him while breaking the space. His figure transformed into a golden streamer and violently dashed forward. The tremendous repulsive force propelled Yi Shiwen forward as fast as lightning. He had covered a large distance in a flash, as if it were only a few inches. He instantly caught up with his target and formed the Hanzhan seal. Bang! The Hanzhan seal fell down from above like a huge mountain. The void collapsed under the immense pressure. Bang! The body of that middle-aged expert got crushed under the tremendous pressure of Yi Zaiwen's attack. The entire space turned quiet. Everyone was blankly watching this scene before their eyes. They felt like idiots. They had never imagined that this could happen. They hadn't anticipated that the situation would turn out like this. The main reason why they had arrived here was that they had wanted to curry favor with King Tai by killing Yi Shiwen. And it should have been very easy, since Yi Shiwen was only an expert of the intermediate stage of Sage Realm half-year ago. Sage Realm was very difficult to reach for most of the human experts. However, it was no big deal for this group. They had brought more than a dozen Sage experts. In fact, their group even included a senior expert of the Sage Great Perfection Realm. So, no matter how formidable their target was, he wouldn't be a match for them. It was precisely because of this that they had rushed here of their own accord while striving to be the first and fearing to be last. They were willing to do anything to curry favor with their future lord, and this non-risky mission was most welcome. However, they hadn't thought that things would eventually change like this. The most powerful expert among them couldn't stop Yi Zaiwen's attack and had gone out flying. Run away quickly. Those remaining 10 experts couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't clear who had shouted. However, everyone began to turn around to escape. They had arrived here to curry favor with King Tai. But they were indeed afraid of death. They didn't want to throw away their lives for the sake of the Doming Heaven Dojo. Their speed was quick. However, it wasn't faster than Yi Zaiwen's speed. Yi Shiwen went all out and killed them rapidly. The space once again turned quiet in a matter of moments. In fact, there was a dead silence. Yi Shiwen had obtained some information from King Tai's subordinates. So, he knew that King Tai had transformed into a streamer of light and had been shuttling through the space towards Yi Zaiwen's location. Hurry up! Hurry up! I want to tear that bastard with my own hands, King Tai fiercely said. It was hard to imagine how much hatred he possessed for Yi Shiwen. He wanted to tear Yi Shiwen into pieces and devour his flesh. He knew that Yi Shiwen had already left Great Gas Chamber of Commerce. So he was in a hurry. Also, he knew that his subordinates would have already confronted Yi Shiwen. Therefore, he wanted to reach there even more quickly. Otherwise, his men would have already killed Yi Shiwen by the time he arrived, and his half-year-long wait would go in vain. Make sure you wait for me. I will rip you apart with my own hands, King Tai said while laughing fiercely. His speed was extremely fast. He had reached that battlefield rather quickly. However, he was surprised to see that the entire scene was in a mess, and a figure was sitting upright in the center of this scene. He looked like a Buddha who had been quietly cultivating and had fused with the universe. Boy, you didn't try to escape? King Tai had recognized in a glance that this figure was Yi Zaiwen's. It could be said that he hated Yi Shiwen to the core. He had seen him only one time. However, he had such a deep impression of him that he could recognize him in one glance. Yi Shiwen stood up and exposed a smile from the corner of his mouth. It looked somewhat ice-cold. I don't have the habit of putting aside danger. If there is a threat, then I must destroy it as soon as possible. Yi Shiwen had been waiting here for King Tai. He had come to know that King Tai was going to arrive here from those experts he had killed. So, he had decided that he would settle the deal with King Tai once and for all right here. He already knew that King Tai was the kind of person who would take revenge even for the slightest of grievances. He hated Yi Shiwen and wanted to kill him just because he had snatched away an item from him in the auction. Such a person would do anything if left unattended. This represented the so-called saying, cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. It would be better to attack first and kill him instead of waiting for him to attack. Ah, you've got some courage. King Tai furiously laughed. His ominous power shook the space in the surroundings and shattered it. But it's fine. The heaven is helping me. Now you die. This was the ominous power of King Tai. He had acquired it when he had lived in seclusion among the demon beasts for a long time. He was also an expert of sage great perfection realm. However, he and that middle-aged expert weren't on same level. There was a difference of cloud and mud between them. He looked like the king of demon beasts in this starry space. He looked incomparably ferocious. To be continued. Chapter 546. King Tai shouted loudly and summoned a 2-meter-tall star beast. Its head was like that of a leopard, its body was like that of a tiger, and its tail was like that of a scorpion. Its entire body was blood red. It looked exceptionally ferocious. Yi Shiwen had seen the record of this strange star beast in the ancient books. It was the combination of 3 animals, leopard, tiger, and scorpion. It wasn't known to which species of demon beasts it belonged. All the fierce beasts of the world, like the demon beasts, the star beasts, and so on, followed a simple principle. The purer the blood, the more ferocious the beast is. The human race also followed this rule. The men who possessed the blood of the ancient humans were awfully powerful. However, this hybrid beast was clearly an exception to this rule. It looked insolent and fierce as it raised its head and roared. Its roar shook the entire surrounding space. It was incomparably dreadful. This star beast possessed an incredibly ominous dominance. It looked like the king of the beasts. It looked up and stood straight. Then it trod with its 4 claws and ripped apart the space. This fight had attracted many experts here. A lot of experts had left for the Great Gas Collar. However, some of the experts believed that they wouldn't get any good opportunities to obtain divine treasures at the Great Gas Collar. After all, those fortuitous encounters came with brutal killings. They either believed that they didn't possess enough strength, or they believed that they didn't have good luck. Basically, they were just too ordinary. The majority of them were the experts of the Great Gas City who knew everything about the Great Gas Collar. Therefore, they didn't want to go there to throw away their lives. A lot of people had heard that King Tai had been talking about killing someone in the past 6 months. That someone had turned out to be Yi Shiwen. Now, Yi Shiwen had come out, and King Tai had set out to kill him. And these people didn't wish to miss this epic confrontation. Many people had arrived here one after another. They looked from afar that the ominous energy of a star beast was boiling in space. My goodness, isn't that the hybrid beast that has been accompanying King Tai for many years now? It is said that many people had gone to suppress the group of tiger leopard scorpions after King Tai had fallen into their group. However, they had seen that this tiger leopard scorpion was calmly accompanying King Tai when they arrived there. It is said that this tiger leopard scorpion is of a different nature from birth. It is inherently bold and powerful. Of course, there's no doubt about it. It looks extremely terrifying, It seems that it can tear the world to shreds. Yi Zaiwen's complexion turned serious. This hybrid beast didn't lack in strength when compared to King Tai. In fact, this demon beast of variant origin had also reached the sage great perfection realm. It seemed that it would be very difficult to deal with it. Kill! King Tai stepped onto that hybrid beast and shouted loudly. The spirit energies of the entire space began to vibrate crazily. They vibrated and twisted. The scene looked extremely terrifying. King Tai pulled out heavenly and painted halberd and held it in his hand. It issued a dreadful charm. Yi Shiwen snorted as he saw this. Then the golden vitality in his entire body surged out. It transformed into an energy pillar and soared up. Then, that energy pillar swept all across in an overwhelming manner. There wasn't even a bit of fear on Yi Zaiwen's face as he faced King Tai, who rushed towards him like a small mountain. In fact, he felt somewhat excited deep in his heart. That expert of sage great perfection realm whom he had fought earlier was no challenge when compared to King Tai. Yi Shiwen spread out his hands at this time. Then he suddenly clenched his fists and transformed them into a big star. Then, this big star swept forward with a loud rumbling sound. Rumble! The big star collided in the sky with the halberd, and this collision issued a metal clanging sound. The tip of King Tai's halberd and Yi Zaiwen's fist pressure collided. Both of them had attacked with their entire strength. King Tai's body got swept away by a dreadful astral wind. His complexion turned slightly discolored. He hadn't thought that Yi Shiwen could be so powerful. After all, he had believed that Yi Shiwen was merely an expert of the late stage of Sage Realm, nothing more. However, Yi Shiwen was fighting with him barehanded. Moreover, it seemed that his strength was incredible, and so was his potential. In fact, it could be said that he would develop to a great extent if he was left alive. The entire starry space suddenly exploded. The spot of collision in the space had already transformed into smoke and dust. Numerous cracks had appeared even at faraway places. The complexions of those experts who had dared to arrive here to witness this fight changed as soon as they saw this. They felt that they might get to see this kind of a fight only once in their entire lifetime. However, what had shocked them the most was that this unknown boy before their eyes had turned out to be a match for King Tai. Moreover, he was fighting with King Tai unarmed. This was what King Tai used to do with others in the past. He often used to take on his opponents like a beast by relying only upon his tyrannical body. However, the situation had reversed in this instance. King Tai's complexion slightly changed. He had come across such a tough opponent for the first time in his life. His opponent was fighting with him barehanded. This meant that his body was extremely tyrannical. Perhaps it was even more tyrannical than his. Otherwise, how could an expert of the late stage of Sage Realm fight with an expert of Sage Great Perfection Realm? You've got some trick up your sleeves. It's no wonder that you've dared to oppose me. However, it's still useless. Nobody can save you. Today, you shall die, King Tai furiously said. A proud and cruel grin appeared on his face. Yi Shiwen's eyes were ice cold at the moment. King Tai possessed outstanding strength. He deserved to be one of the 4 heroes of Great Gas. He was indeed strong enough to rule among his peers. However, Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest intention of retreating. He raised his hand and clenched his fist. He then said, "I will take on whoever dares to fight with me. This day shall be your death anniversary next year." "That's very audacious of you." King Tai burst into laughter as his halberd pointed towards Yi Shiwen once again. He then attacked carrying a dreadful, imposing aura. He rushed forward sitting on the hybrid beast and shattered the void. And a wave of murderous aura erupted to complemented King Tai's tyranny. King Tai's halberd sketched a long, imaginary shadow in the space. It suddenly issued countless halberd beams, which went flying towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen simply disregarded it. A fist swept down and transformed into a huge star. The huge star crushed everything in its path. Those halberd beams bombarded on top of this star. However, a burst of golden light suddenly appeared in that instant and annihilated those halberd beams. Consequently, the halberd beams disappeared without a trace after giving rise to a few ripples. How is it possible? King Tai didn't dare to believe what he had just seen. What is his body made of? How can it be so tough? A bad feeling appeared in his mind at this time. However, Yi Shiwen didn't give him a chance to react, and he quickly launched another attack. Each of his fists pounded like a big star. It blotted out the sky and covered the earth, and set off strong energy storms. This was the most unusual fight. Both sides had gone all out. The speed of their attacks was so quick that it had dazzled the majority of experts who had been witnessing the fight from afar. In fact, they couldn't even tell how many times these two individuals had clashed in that instant. Clang! 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 The two individuals attacked each other, and metal clanging sounds were issued. However, it seemed Yi Shiwen had suppressed King Tai by using his fist alone. Bang! Suddenly, a huge explosion sounded. King Tai retreated several times in front of everyone while remaining seated atop his hybrid beast. In fact, he had nearly fallen off the hybrid beast. He spouted mouthful of blood. A big and round hole had been opened on his chest. Moreover, his metal armor had also been shattered. In fact, he would have died if that metal armor hadn't been protecting his body. King Tai stared at Yi Shiwen in a malicious manner. He hadn't paid attention to Yi Shiwen at first. He had only wanted to tear him into shreds and devour his flesh thereafter. However, he had realized how wrong he had been after he had fought with Yi Shiwen. He had always fought with everyone depending solely upon his tyrannical body. People used to say that he was a star beast in the form of a human. He had always toyed with his opponent to his heart's content. However, his strongest aspect looked extremely weak in front of Yi Shiwen. In fact, his most tyrannical aspect had been rendered useless because he had come across an opponent with a more powerful body than his own. And that was why he was suffering right now. His strongest aspect had been nullified. So, what could he depend on now? He had become aware of the terror of Yi Zaiwen's ferocious body, just like those demon beasts that had died at Yi Zaiwen's hands. His attacks couldn't shake Yi Zaiwen's defense. In fact, it seemed as if he were a golden god of war. However, Yi Shiwen hadn't even paid any attention to his defenses. Moreover, it had been his simplest of attacks that King Tai had been finding trouble coping up with. King Tai had tried very hard to injure Yi Shiwen. However, he hadn't been able to do so. On the other hand, Yi Zaiwen's casual attacks had injured him to the point of leaving him to vomit blood. Are you okay? King Tai's hybrid beast opened its mouth and asked. I'm fine. King Tai clenched his teeth and somehow suppressed the vitality that was surging inside his body. However, he still continued to spout blood because of his wounded vitality. It'll kill him. It'll rip him to shreds. Yi Shiwen was standing in the void. He looked average and nowhere near spectacular. However, he carried a terrifying and outstanding aura. Everyone had come to feel it, especially after he had completely repulsed King Tai. King Tai looked at Yi Shiwen. His eyes were ice-cold like electricity. They were brimming with killing intention and intense hatred. Bang! King Tai lifted his halberd. The space exploded, and halberd beams swept out. His murderous aura looked boundless. Such battle prowess had surpassed the level of an ordinary expert of sage, great perfection realm. Everyone was terrified when they saw this. After all, such fighting strength was enough to slaughter all of them at the same time. The most powerful person among them was merely an expert of the late stage of Sage Realm. After all, the experts who were stronger than the ones in this group had already entered the Great Gas Collar. It was impossible for the ordinary experts that were present here to not get terrified while witnessing such fighting strength. However, what made them even more terrified was that King Tai, who possessed such incredible fighting strength, had been forced into a disadvantageous position by Yi Shiwen. In fact, King Tai had been brutally battered by Yi Zaiwen's attacks. Moreover, he had been left exhausted and distressed. In fact, the experts who were witnessing this fight had begun to believe that Yi Shiwen was as terrifying as an ancient killing god. Kill! King Tai's murderous aura burst out. He knew that he had fallen into a disadvantageous position. However, he didn't become weak. On the contrary, his killing intention rose even higher. He then stormed towards Yi Shiwen while carrying the long halberd in his hand. He felt that he needed to seize this opportunity to kill Yi Shiwen. "It seems that you haven't understood it yet." Yi Shiwen smirked. There was no doubt that King Tai was very powerful. However, he couldn't pose any threat to him unless he was a Heaven's Pride expert of the same realm. What was a Heaven's Pride expert? They were the so-called peerless geniuses who appeared one in millions. The true martial university had a few Heaven's Pride experts among its millions of disciples. However, those millions of experts who had arrived in the true martial university were the best ones among God knows how many experts in the southern region. Moreover, even those experts had been selected from countless ordinary people. It needn't be mentioned that the southern region was so huge that it was hard to count how many people populated it. It didn't matter how big the Great Gas City was. After all, it was only a city, nothing more. It wasn't on the same level as the southern region. To be continued. Chapter 547. Chapter 547. Slaughters King Tai. Yi Shiwen possessed the fighting strength of a Heaven's Pride expert. In fact, he could be called a peerless genius among the Heaven's Pride experts. There have been several Heaven's Pride experts in the southern region in the past 100 years. In fact, the Heaven's Pride experts who had died at Yi Zaiwen's hands would have become more terrifying if they had grown up to this day. King Tai might have pulled Yi Shiwen into a bitter struggle if he was also a Heaven's Pride expert. Yi Shiwen sneered. A big hand stretched out and fell down from above. It then transformed into a great seal and swept down. Bang! The great seal pounded upon King Tai's halberd. A terrifying force traveled through the halberd and charged into his body. Consequently, it became a little difficult for King Tai to hold the halberd since his palms had been cracked open to bleed. Moreover, the legs of the hybrid beast on which King Tai was sitting had also bent because of the attack. It nearly fell to its knees as a result, but its movement crushed the void underneath. King Tai had finally discovered that his martial arts accomplishment was nothing in comparison to Yi Shiwen. Moreover, there was a huge disparity in his level of martial Dao achievement as well. The disparity wasn't as big as the disparity between humans and ants. However, it was as much as the difference between cloud and mud. It could also be compared to the disparity between an infant and a sturdy adult. Now die. Blood rain, killing demon. King Tai roared. He urged out the entire real elemental energy in his body. After all, he needed to turn the tide in his favor at any cost. And he had to go all out for this. There was no other option. His aura began to surge up, and the void in the periphery got distorted in its entirety. The lower half of his body transformed into a pool of blood, and that hybrid beast got integrated into it. Consequently, his fighting strength suddenly turned up a notch. Damn it, boy, I'm not willing to accept that I can't kill you. I'm the best. I'm the head of the 4 heroes of Great Gas. Who do you think you are to be challenging me? King Tai's real elemental energy burst out and disintegrated the void. The unleashed energy contained an incredible divine power. Yi Zaiwen's complexion turned slightly cold while facing King Tai's sudden outbreak. However, his gaze seemed simply unaffected. The page of ancient god scripture flew out behind him. It seemed as if he was reading the god scripture that had been passed down since ancient times. A divine beam burst out and dyed Yi Zaiwen's entire figure golden. He now looked like a golden god of war. It's useless. You're no match for me. What 4 heroes of Great Gas? It's laughable. Yi Shiwen coldly replied. He didn't care about the Great Gas 4 heroes. He would have crushed them like ants if he possessed the same cultivation time as them. He wasn't scared of the Great Gas 4 heroes. However, he would be somewhat wary if the forces backing them attacked him. Yi Zaiwen's fist transformed into a big star, fell down, and struck King Tai's body. King Tai clenched his teeth and suddenly released an incredible scarlet light from his body. The scarlet light transformed into a sky-devouring blood beast. In fact, it looked like an ancient beast from the legends that could swallow the stars. It then suddenly rushed up to attack. Rumble! Yi Zaiwen's big star transformed into numerous sword lights as he faced this dreadful insurrection. And that blood beast got cut into two halves on the spot. The beast transformed into an astral wind in the void, and was then swept away like a mighty wave. King Tai had nearly transformed into a fierce beast during this attack. Moreover, countless scales had grown over his body. Suddenly, the scarlet halberd streaked through the vast space. It carried an invincible, ominous energy and instantly arrived in front of Yi Shiwen to kill him. King Tai's muscles began to rupture. It was evident that he couldn't maintain this beastly form for long. Blood splashed out from his body, and he transformed into a blood man. In addition, his complexion turned exceptionally fierce. Half of the reason for this transformation was his immense hatred for Yi Shiwen, while the other half was his unbearable pain which had converted into immense power. This was to be his last as well as most powerful strike. A sword appeared in Yi Zaiwen's palm. He then slashed with it. The strike transformed into a sword light and swept out. It rushed towards that scarlet halberd. Buried Heaven's Sword. Yi Shiwen had already mastered the sword technique of Buried Heaven's Sword to the bone. So, even his single effortless sword strike was able to unleash a dreadful amount of power. Bang! King Tai's strength had reached its zenith, and it seemed that he would break the world. However, Yi Zaiwen's strength was still more formidable. King Tai's body got blown away by Yi Shiwen once again. Moreover, his body was being torn apart by Yi Zaiwen's horrifying power. In fact, it had nearly been ripped apart by now. Yi Shiwen streaked across the space and instantly arrived in front of King Tai. The incredible magical prowess of Devil Wings had manifested to the extreme. Yi Shiwen stretched out his hand. It suddenly transformed into an exceptionally huge seal and slammed down on King Tai. Everyone was stunned as they witnessed the scene before their eyes. King Tai's strength had been insane before he had transformed, and his strength had increased by a notch after transforming into a beast. However, he still hadn't been able to stand his ground in front of Yi Shiwen. Moreover, he had been routed very effortlessly. This showed that Yi Shiwen was far too powerful. It's over. King Tai is done for. He looks like an infant in front of this man, even after unleashing his utmost power. He's far inferior to this man. They aren't on the same level. It's a pity. King Tai is a peerless genius of our great gas city. He might have had the opportunity to enter the great sage realm in the future. However, he's going to fall here. King Tai always bullies others by abusing the power of the dominating Heaven Dojo. So, it is a good thing that he's going to die now. This man is reckless and unruly. He has dared to resort to extreme methods against King Tai. The dominating Heaven Dojo isn't going to leave this matter be. This will shake the entire Great Gas City. Most of the spectators didn't have a favorable opinion of King Tai's chances. After all, King Tai didn't have anything that could give these people even a bit of hope about his chances against Yi Zaiwen's unimaginable strength. Stop! A furious shout came from the Great Gas City. All the spirit energies gathered in the surroundings suddenly scattered like clouds. Then a big hand swept out from the Great Gas City. It ripped through the vast space and rushed towards the battlefield. This attack carried immensely dreadful strength and the power of boundless principles. Its might couldn't be matched, and this development instantly left everyone terrified. Great Sage. This scary Great Sage coercion made a lot of experts weak in the knee. They didn't dare to disobey. After all, this was the true power of Great Sage. There would be no suspense about the outcome if an ordinary sage expert clashed with a great sage expert. It would be impossible for ordinary sage experts to contend against a great sage expert because they weren't on the same level as a great sage expert. This is dominating Heaven Dojo's lord. Yi Shiwen felt that overwhelming, imposing aura. Moreover, the killing intention was hardly concealed. In fact, it seemed that it would engulf him whole. Humph! Yi Shiwen snorted. This dominating Heaven Dojo's lord must have been observing King Tai since the beginning. He must have been considering Yi Shiwen as King Tai's whetstone. Therefore, he hadn't done anything so far. However, He had now seen that King Tai had fallen into a disadvantageous position. Moreover, he was also about to die at Yi Zaiwen's hands. So, he couldn't stop himself from attacking. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't the kind of person who would leave the root of the trouble behind. King Tai's personality wouldn't allow him to be grateful to Yi Shiwen if Yi Shiwen didn't kill him. Instead, he would harbor a grudge against him and would think about methods to kill him. Bang! King Tai screamed as his body got crushed by Yi Shiwen. Then his body transformed into a mass of blood fog, and his soul got shattered. You have a death wish. The dominating Heaven Dojo's lord became infuriated when he saw his beloved disciple being killed. He had been nurturing King Tai for many years so that he could succeed him. He had put mental and physical efforts for many years to nurture King Tai, and had made him one of the 4 heroes of Great Gas. Moreover, King Tai was expected to become a great sage in the future. However, the entirety of his efforts had gone in vain since King Tai had been killed by Yi Shiwen. Everything had gone in vain, so he would now have to spend several hundred years more to cultivate another person. And this new talent still might not be able to achieve King Tai's level of strength. Moreover, the other 3 heroes of Great Gas would have grown to God knows what extent till then. This was the most awful thing that could have happened. A dreadful imposing aura soared in the space above the Great Gas City, and a silhouette carrying a boundlessly evil aura swept towards the battlefield. His big hand had already ripped through the vast space, and was coming towards Yi Shiwen to grab him. It seemed that it would soon crush Yi Shiwen to death. Whoosh! Yi Zaiwen's speed was extremely quick. He transformed into a golden flash in an instant, and moved several hundred kilometers away. Bang! The place where Yi Shiwen had stood a moment ago exploded. The space collapsed, and chaos leaked out from it. Then, the space exploded. It was like the aftermath of Doomsday. It looked insanely terrifying. Yi Shiwen would have been crushed to death if he hadn't escaped so quickly. After all, he was merely an expert of the late stage of Sage Realm. Therefore, he differed from the Great Sage by several realms. So, he could have gotten crushed to death very easily. The disparity between Sage Realm and Great Sage Realm was bigger than the disparity between Legendary Realm and Sage Realm. In fact, there was a difference of cloud and mud between them. They were simply not on same level. Boy, you will die. I won't let you off. The Lord of Dominating Heaven Dojo roared like an injured beast. He had entered Great Sage Realm many years ago, and nobody had ever dared to act like this against him till now. In addition, everyone used to pay respect to his disciples wherever they went. Nobody had ever dared to resort to extreme methods against his disciples. He had nurtured his successor for so many years. However, that would-be successor was now dead. So, it was certain that he would go insane and harbor an enormous grievance against his would-be successor's killer. It was hard to imagine how fast a great sage's attack could be. After all, this great sage's attack had crossed an enormous chunk of space in an instant to arrive close to the battlefield. Yi Shiwen had felt that an aura that initially had been very far away had arrived close to him in an instant. A great sage expert was very scary. However, it wasn't that Yi Shiwen didn't know this. After all, he had made a narrow escape from the hands of a great sage expert of the Fire Cloud Cave in the past. He had been attacked several times that day, but he had still managed to escape. His strength had certainly increased significantly from back then. However, he knew that he was still far from being a match for a ferocious expert of the Great Sage Realm. Therefore, he immediately opened his devil wings, transformed into a streamer of light, and flew into the distance. To be continued. Chapter 548. Bang! 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 A golden streamer was randomly shuttling around in the space at a great speed, and a big hand was unceasingly pressing down from above. The big hand shattered the space and transformed it into a mass of chaos every time it pressed down. It appeared as if this big hand was giving birth to a new world each time it slammed down. Ah! Yi Shiwen heard the roar of the Lord of the dominating heaven dojo coming from behind him. The spiritual power contained in that big hand was tightly locked on his body. His pair of golden wings fluttered faster and faster. Great sage experts were extremely ferocious. They could cover 1,000 miles in a single step. Their incredible speed was simply beyond anyone's imagination. It would be useless for an ordinary sage expert, even if they tried to escape as fast as possible. A great sage could catch up with them in an instant. However, Yi Shiwen was no ordinary sage expert. Moreover, his speed would become very high whenever Head used his devil wings. In fact, Head looked like a golden lightning when Head used his devil wings. This was how he had managed to escape from the hands of a great sage expert, even when he only possessed the strength of semi-sage level. However, he was considered a super expert in sage realm now. It wasn't clear how much his strength had increased. Moreover, his devil wings had reached a whole new level as well. He had been chased non-stop by a great sage expert in the past. In fact, he had come close to being grasped on several occasions. However, his speed had become even faster now. The rage of the Lord of the dominating heaven dojo had soared. He roared again and again. However, he couldn't catch Yi Shiwen. He was missing to catch him by a bit every time. Yi Ziwen's present attitude was much more calm and confident as compared to when he had been chased by that great sage expert of the Fire Cloud Cave. However, the Lord of the dominating heaven dojo chased Yi Shiwen continuously. He wasn't willing to give up. It seemed that he wouldn't spare Yi Shiwen even if he had to pursue him to the end of the world. It felt that he would definitely tear him to shreds since he had killed his beloved disciple. Yi Shiwen, quickly go towards the great gas collar. You want going there? Yi Mo promptly reminded. Yi Shiwen nodded. However, Yi Mo didn't need to say that since Yi Shiwen had already been flying in the direction of the great gas collar. Yi Shiwen had slaughtered King Tai. So, the Lord of dominating heaven dojo wasn't going to spare him. In fact, it seemed that he would pursue him to the world's edge. The devil wings were too awesome, and he didn't need to stop even for a bit. However, he didn't wish to spend his remaining life being chased like this. Therefore, he could go only in the direction of the great gas collar since the great sage experts didn't dare to enter that place. However, the Lord of the dominating heaven dojo made out Yi Ziwen's intention soon enough. And he flew into a rage when he figured out that Yi Shiwen wanted to enter the great gas collar. He would escape if I let him enter the great gas collar. And I won't be able to take revenge on this vile murderer who has killed my disciple. Therefore, he tried to increase his speed. However, his speed had already reached to its limit. So his speed didn't increase further no matter how much he tried. And he kept falling short of Yi Shiwen by an inch every time as a result. He had obviously become furious. He didn't know what kind of agility technique Yi Shiwen possessed that had enabled an ordinary sage expert like him to escape from the hands of a great sage expert. This seemed like a big miracle which would shake the entire starry space if declared publicly. The Lord of the dominating heaven dojo roared again and again. However, he couldn't catch Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen looked like a golden streamer that was far too fast. Moreover, it seemed that his momentum and power weren't reducing with time. Yi Ziwen's foundation was very deep, and his real elemental energy was even more profound. Even an expert of sage great perfection realm might not have such profound cultivation. So, it wasn't clear how long it would take for his energy to exhaust. In fact, he had all kinds of spirit dawn for replenishing his real elemental energy. He had certainly consumed a huge amount of primary spirit dawn in these 6 months. However, a huge amount of it was still left in his stock. In addition, he also had a lot of medicinal pills in his stock for replenishing his real elemental energy. So, it was basically impossible for him to exhaust the entirety of his resources. A lot of people were on the trajectory to the Great Gas Collar from Great Gas City. They saw that a flustered-looking senior great sage expert was chasing an ordinary sage expert in exasperation. The sound of his roars surged up like thunder and shook the surroundings. A chunk of the space collapsed every time the big hand slammed down. The scene looked extremely dreadful. It was hard to tell how many people had been affected by this chase so far. After all, the mere aftershocks from this chase had injured many sage experts. Bang! Both men had reached the borderline of the Great Gas Collar. The Great Gas Collar looked different from earlier, when it had been blockaded by the poisonous gas. Now, it had finally revealed a bit of its true appearance. However, some areas still had a weak presence of the poisonous fog. The ordinary people in these areas were able to enter the Great Gas Collar. However, the collar looked like a giant continent. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen suddenly arrived while streaking across the space like a golden streamer and vanished into the Great Gas Collar without even stopping for a moment. Roar! The sound of the Lord of the dominating Heaven Dojo's furious roar reverberated behind him. He had gone mad in rage since Yi Shiwen had escaped. Yi Shiwen had entered the Great Gas Collar. So, the dojo lord couldn't pursue him any further. Phew! Yi Shiwen let out a sigh of relief. He had planned how he would escape if he were to come across a great sage expert. However, he heaved a sigh of relief after having executed that plan. There is a difference of heaven and earth between Great Sage Realm and Sage Realm. They simply aren't on the same level. The Lord of the dominating Heaven Dojo is just at the initial stage of Great Sage Realm. However, he is as awe-inspiring as a god. Yi Shiwen said this. He still had a lingering fear in his heart. A great sage-level expert was far more powerful than what he had imagined. He will definitely send people to blockade this Great Gas Collar. He won't let you escape very easily. Yi Mo warned. The Great Gas Collar was very big. However, it wasn't impossible for these super experts to blockade it. Yi Shiwen developed a headache as he thought all this. An ordinary sage expert would certainly be screwed if he got chased by a great sage expert who was dead set on not letting him go. Therefore, this was only a temporary escape. He would still have to face him later. However, it's not impossible to deal with it. Yi Mo sneered and said, "You speed up the process of refining the soul of the Star Colossus. Your blood slave can grow up quickly to the initial stage of half-step Great Sage Realm that way. And it will be able to display the might of Great Sage level by controlling the corpse of the Star Colossus once it's there." Yi Shiwen wasn't the only one who had made a fast progress. Yi Shiwen had surely made the breakthrough into the late stage of Sage Realm, but that blood slave had already reached the Sage Accomplished Realm. In fact, it had made much quicker progress than Yi Shiwen. The blood slave itself was formed by absorbing the Star Colossus soul. Therefore, the so-called bottleneck, realization of realm, and so on didn't matter for the blood slave, since its growth was based on direct borrowing. Its cultivation increased by absorbing the Star Colossus. So, the quicker it would absorb, the faster it would progress. The blood slave could now display the strength of the late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm when it controlled the corpse of the Star Colossus. However, its body would become even more tyrannical than Yi Zaiwen's with the aid of the Star Colossus if it itself could progress to the initial stage of half-step Great Sage Realm. And it could contend against the experts of initial stage of Great Sage Realm at that time. However, it was easier said than done. The blood slave wouldn't need to enter the Great Sage Realm. However, half-step Great Sage Realm still had those two words in it, Great and Sage. So, it was still very challenging. Fortunately, the blood slave didn't have to face any realm barrier. Therefore, the task could be accomplished as long as the rate of absorption was accelerated. Anyway, I've shaken off this guy for now. Yi Shiwen ignored the Lord of the dominating Heaven Dojo as he continued to roar in the background. Yi Shiwen then rushed inside. "Brother, please wait for a moment." A crisp yet elegant voice came from behind. Yi Shiwen turned around to see an approximately 20 years old woman. Her skin was as fair as snow. Her eyes looked like pools of limpid autumn water as they flickered like the stars in the sky. Her fine black hair hung over her shoulder, and an ivory silk long skirt outlined her graceful body. In addition, she had draped another watercolored slim-fit robe which had embroidery of light cyan threads at the collar and cuffs. She wore a pair of shoes which were also cyan in color. And, Each of those shoes had a light pink lotus embroidered over them. The lotuses looked prominent, yet elegant. Yi Shiwen frowned as he saw that woman slowly emerging from the void. He also became a bit vigilant since he had discovered that this woman possessed the strength of Sage Great Perfection Realm. In fact, she was no less than King Tai. "What's the matter?" Yi Shiwen asked. "Please forgive this younger sister for being presumptuous. This younger sister is Ding Tong. I've just seen your outstanding might. Even a great sage expert was unable to deal with you. I would like to invite you to join our team." The woman, Ding Tong, faintly smiled and replied. "You saw that?" Yi Shiwen frowned and looked at Ding Tong. His eyes flashed a few times. He suddenly became vigilant in his heart. The Lord of the Dominating Heaven Dojo couldn't come here. However, it didn't mean that no one from the Dominating Heaven Dojo could come here. There were a lot of experts in the Dominating Heaven Dojo. Some of them had even reached Sage Accomplished Realm. And he believed that those Sage Accomplished level experts wouldn't let him off if they found him. In fact, they wouldn't rest until they had hunted him down. The experts of Sage Accomplished Realm weren't as powerful as the experts of Great Sage Realm. However, Yi Shiwen still couldn't contend against them unless he took out the Blood Slave while it was controlling the Star Colossus. However, he reckoned that the Blood Slave would get affected by the Great Gas Collar if he took it out here. It would then get ganged up and destroyed by his enemies. After all, the Great Gas Collar didn't allow anyone with a strength above the Sage Realm to enter its boundaries. Yi Shiwen would still manage to escape. However, it would be very troublesome. Don't misunderstand me. We and the Dominating Heavens Dojo aren't together. In fact, we don't even belong to the Great Gas City. Ding Tong explained. She was afraid that Yi Shiwen had misunderstood her. After all, she had seen him escaping from the hands of the Lord of the Dominating Heaven Dojo just now. She clearly knew how much the difference between Sage Realm and Great Sage Realm was. However, Yi Shiwen had escaped from the hands of a great sage expert. So, he had to be a famous person. In fact, he had to be a top player in the Sage Realm. Moreover, it was also clear that Yi Shiwen was a fierce person. Therefore, it would be very bad for her if she messed up and he misunderstood her for a disciple of the Dominating Heaven Dojo. Our team isn't from the River Shore Star Field. We have come from another star field. We have arrived at Great Gas Collar in order to make some profit. Would you like to join us? Ding Tong asked. Yi Shiwen raised his eyebrows. He was very familiar with the method of such small groups. There was advantage as well as disadvantage in joining them. The advantage was that it would be safer to operate in a group of people inside the Great Gas Collar. However, the disadvantage was that one might die if the other group members had evil intentions. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care about this. Even an expert of Sage Accomplished Realm couldn't stop him from escaping. Anyway, he hadn't gotten the time to collect information regarding the Great Gas Collar because of King Tai. So, he could also obtain some information by joining this team. Yi Shiwen nodded after he had thought this. Very well then. To be continued. Chapter 549. The two individuals didn't hesitate and flew towards the depths of the Great Gas Collar after Yi Shiwen had agreed. I have invited you so presumptuously because there's a tomb in the depths of the Great Gas Collar. It is said that this place contains a secret that can help a sage expert to enter the Great Sage Realm. Ding Tong explained. Yi Shiwen raised his eyebrows. A bright light glittered in his eyes. The Sage Realm was an extravagant hope for the majority of experts. However, every sage expert wanted to enter the Great Sage Realm. Sage experts could merely defend themselves in the starry space. However, great sage experts were considered the powerhouses of the starry space. In fact, they were capable enough of reigning over a region. The Great Sage Realm could be attained easily by the experts of Sage Great Perfection Realm and Sage Accomplished Realm. However, the star field was like a natural barrier. So, it was much more difficult to make the breakthrough into the Great Sage Realm in the star field as compared to on a planet. The promotion from the legendary realm to the Sage Realm could be said to cause the transformation of body. However, the promotion from Sage Realm to Great Sage Realm led to the transformation of soul by this analogy. And this transformation would be completed only after one had entered the Great Sage Realm. However, many people have obtained this news. So, a chaotic fight between exceptional heroes is imminent. Therefore, we hope to find as many experts as possible for support. Ding Tong said. Yishuan nodded. Countless people would have gone crazy if there was indeed a method to enter the Great Sage Realm. Moreover, those who have dared to enter the Great Gas Collar are undoubtedly super experts of the Sage Realm. And all of them would love to enter Great Sage Realm. It is said that someone had obtained this treasure the last time this Great Gas Collar had opened. And that person reached the Great Sage Realm very quickly after going out of the Great Gas Collar. Ding Tong added. Therefore, many experts would be arriving for this secret this time. In fact, our team also has a lot of experts. I hope Brother Yi will join hands with me in the fight when the time comes. Ding Tong glanced at Yi Shiwen with her sparkling eyes and said. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that something wasn't right. What kind of a situation is this? This Ding Tong obviously doesn't trust the people of her own group. Moreover, she wants an outsider like me to join her in the fight. Isn't it kind of funny? It's evident how wary they are of each other. It's no wonder that they've dared to add more people to the group. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but become more vigilant after having thought this. Yi Shiwen had known that the situation at the Great Gas Collar was going to be complicated. However, it was much more complicated than what he had imagined. He might fall into someone's trap if he were not careful. However, Yi Shiwen didn't think much about it at this time. And this was probably related to that secret which could help people to enter the Great Sage Realm. Yi Shiwen couldn't let this opportunity slip out of his hands. After all, his journey to the Great Sage Realm would become much simpler if he managed to obtain this secret. He knew nothing about this so-called secret. Therefore, it would be better for him to follow this team and obtain some concrete information first. Moreover, those people who might scheme against him must know that he was no fool. Only the time would tell who schemed against whom. We must not delay in that case. We must rush over there, Yi Shiwen said. Then, both individuals quickly disappeared into the horizon. Both of them were outstanding experts in the Sage Realm. It was hard to tell how many miles they had traveled within the blink of an eye. They had arrived inside a mountain valley after about half-day's time. The Great Gas Collar was very famous for being a dangerous place. Violent auras of extremely fierce demon beasts could be felt everywhere. They would have had a fight with several beasts if Yi Shiwen hadn't sensed them in advance. Neither of them was afraid of those demon beasts. However, they wanted to avoid needless confrontations since they would have delayed them. The entire Great Gas Collar was full of dangers. It looked like a prehistoric, great ancient continent from the fables. Wild auras of demon beasts were lurking everywhere. They were present in large numbers and had formed a kingdom. This kingdom had an army. It seemed as if it was a country of demon beasts. The situation was very dreadful. They individually couldn't cause a threat to the elite human experts. However, they seemed terrifying when they appeared in groups. We will wait for them here. Our team had only a few people at first, but those few people had gone to look for helpers afterwards. And I happened to be the first one to return among them. Ding Tong said, This place is full of demon beasts. This place is more terrifying than a desolate wilderness. Moreover, I have means to escape from an expert of Sage Great Perfection realm when it comes to one-on-one confrontation. However, it will be better to stay as far away as possible from that army of demon beasts. Yi Shiwen didn't say anything in response. An ordinary person must stay as far as possible from such an army of demon beasts. After all, one individual may be able to fight with 10 or even 100 beasts. However, an ordinary expert surely couldn't fight with 1,000 demon beasts. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't ordinary. He was capable of fighting with 1,000 demon beasts. So, he wasn't afraid of fighting with a huge group even if he was alone. After all, he had Phoenix regeneration technique to protect his body. So, he could recover from his injuries in an instant using this technique. Moreover, he had already perfected his tyrant body to the 7th layer. So, it wasn't that easy to injure him. Ding Tong had keenly noticed Yi Zaiwen's silence to her remarks of caution. However, she maintained her composure. After all, it was normal for the powerful experts to be a bit arrogant. Moreover, this person had managed to escape from the hands of a great sage expert. She wouldn't have believed that this man who looked like an ordinary expert of the late stage of Sage Realm had escaped from the hands of a great sage expert if she hadn't seen it with her own eyes. In fact, she would have considered it a fairy tale if she had heard about this matter from someone. One would think that Yi Shiwen was unfathomable if they had seen him at that time. One couldn't tell what his background was. Yi Shiwen suddenly wrinkled his brows as he looked into the distance. A demon beast is peeping on us. Yi Shiwen coldly smiled and said, "It's acting recklessly." Ding Tong was left dumbstruck as Yi Shiwen told her this. So, she swept out her divine sense, and she found a spot in the space to be somewhat strange, and immediately became scared as a result. After all, they were about to gather at this place, and a demon beast was spying here. This was a bad omen. It was possible that a force of demon beasts had been keeping watch here, and was planning to launch an ambush after they had come to know that these people were about to gather here. Moreover, it was also possible that the demon beast which was spying on them was merely a pawn that had arrived here to confirm the news. In any case, it wasn't good news for them. Meanwhile, Yi Shiwen was about to attack. Bang! Suddenly, the entire sky began to tremble, and cracks opened up in the space. Startling divine beams surged down from the sky. Then, those enormous and powerful beams bombarded at that spot in the space. A scream sounded, and a demon beast fell down from the void. It had been blasted into two halves by the direct bombardment. Two figures came from afar, treading on flying lights immediately after that. They had made a flashy entrance. They seemed to have traveled several hundred miles. Yi Shiwen condensed the real elemental energy in his eyes and saw through the light that had filled the entire sky. He saw the figures of a man and a woman. The man stood in front. His imposing aura appeared like a mighty tide. He looked impressive, and his outstanding appearance seemed heroic. He possessed a kind of innate, outstanding bearing. He seemed to be entirely different from a secretive kind of person like Yi Shiwen. They seemed to have two very different styles. A person could tell that this man was powerful by merely looking at him. On the other hand, one had to stay with Yi Shiwen for some time to recognize the extent of his strength. So, this man was entirely different from Yi Shiwen. The woman behind him was exactly the opposite. She wore a red dress that couldn't conceal her perfect figure. In addition, her perfect face carried an alluring and lovely appearance. One would feel a thrill deep in their bones if they shot a glance at her. Gee, didn't I say that you're too careless, Ding Tong? That demon beast had been observing our meeting spot. What would we have done if Brother Gu Tian hadn't attacked in time and that beast had spread the information? That alluring red-clothed woman scolded Ding Tong as soon as she arrived. Yi Shiwen shot a glance at Ding Tong and found that her complexion had darkened. It was clear that she didn't have a good relation with this woman. This is the helper I've found, Gu Tian. He is currently at Sage Great Perfection level and is only one step away from entering Sage Accomplished Realm. He has arrived at Great Gas Collar in order to make the breakthrough. He will strive for a position among the top 10 individuals of Great Gas Building when the time comes. The charming red-clothed woman looked at that impressive man as she said, "Gee, this wouldn't be the helper that you found, right? Ding Tong, we're going to that tomb. There shall be dangers everywhere in that place. So, it would be a joke to take along an expert of the late stage of Sage Realm. He will only get tortured to death over there." The red-clothed woman shot a glance at Yi Shiwen and made out his cultivation level. Then, she said somewhat disdainfully, "These people were at the Sage Great Perfection Realm. Only Yi Shiwen was at the late stage of Sage Realm. So, he stood out among these people in a way. However, he looked prominently weak to be precise. The experts of late stage of Sage Realm weren't weak. In fact, they were famous even in the starry space. They could be sent to some remote star fields as ancestors without a problem. However, Yishuan looked very weak in front of these three experts of Sage Great Perfection Realm. There's no problem if he himself gets killed. However, I'm afraid that he will drag us down with him. Do you think that this is a child's play that anyone can come and join? The red-clothed woman disdainfully looked at Yishuan. She looked deep into his eyes. She had hoped to see him all flustered and exasperated, and flying into a rage. However, she was surprised to see him calm and composed. It seemed that he either didn't mind her words or had ignored them completely. Yishuan, this is my comrade, Xiao Yuanyuan. Ding Tong's complexion soon restored to normal. However, she was unceasingly sneering in her mind. You will surely come to know who's being funny when you experience how ferocious he is. This is the helper I've found. Yi Shiwen. This is the helper you found? It's laughable. Hee. It would have been better if you had returned empty-handed instead of finding someone like this. Xiao Yuanyuan rudely laughed. However, she realized that she had embarrassed herself because both the people whom she had ridiculed hadn't paid any attention to her. In fact, the way they had ignored her had left her to look like a clown. Consequently, a bitter look flashed in her eyes. Suddenly, another burst of divine rays flashed in the sky, and several figures came overflying. To be continued. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.